Welcome back to the #1 Drift podcast on YouTube, presented by Enjuku Racing. My name is Dawson, and today we have a long-awaited guest.
Hi.
It's Aaron Losey. Appreciate you letting me come out and
No problem.
Bringing you on the podcast. But before we get into it, of course, look below the video. Make sure that subscribe button is not still red. If it is, click it and hit that bell notification while you're at it, so you're always updated with every episode. And of course, grab the merch if you can. If not, I appreciate you watching. And don't forget about the BUMZ glasses giveaway until the end of March. All you got to do is comment and like, and you'll be entered. Since this is a long-awaited podcast, this is one that's going to have a lot of questions and stuff in it.
Let's do it.
But I do have a long list of questions from you guys that we will attend to at the end as well. But yeah, if you want to give a little introduction on yourself, if anyone out there doesn't know you, I'd be pretty surprised by that. But
my name is Aaron Losey. I run Lone Star Drift, Drift Week, and stuff like that. I am into drifting just because I like adventure, and it has been an amazing way to go on crazy adventures that I probably couldn't have without drifting. So drifting has been very good to me, where I get to do fun stuff, where I travel around the world, meet amazing people, get to go on cool adventures, do crazy stuff. Even if it's not drifting specific, the people you meet within drifting and the places I get to go and everything else, it's just so cool. So that's what I do.
Hell yeah.
And if I get mad, I'm flipping this table over and we're gone.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, let's do this.
Nah, you're good.
What do you want to talk about?
You've been literally all over the world. We'll get on all that. But I want to start kind of at the beginning, because I don't feel like you shed as much light on who you were before cars and drifting and all this stuff. So what was your life back then before all of this?
I went to art school.
Art school?
For college. Dropped out. I don't have a college degree. I realized like partway through.
That. I hate college.
I have one semester left, and I realized I was like, man, an art degree is incredibly useless. So I moved up to Manhattan, got a job up there doing like production design and stuff for MTV and Nickelodeon magazine. Ended up being in the real estate industry, got really sick of that. And then I basically took like 8 years off and did nothing for 8 years, work related.
Yeah.
And then I've been doing drifting now since 2003, like hosting events.
Wow.
I started drifting a little bit before that, and then I realized like if I wanted to drift, there was an organization called Daily Drifter, and they were rad, but they didn't host events very often and not near me. So I figured I'd have to like actually rent places and do it. And at first I had my friends at Daily Drifter. I'd just pay for everything and they would host the event. I'd rent the venue or do whatever. And then, because I didn't want to work, I didn't want to do it. I wanted to play.
Exactly.
And then I realized that wasn't going to work out for various reasons. I'm still friends with them. They're awesome.
That's good.
And then, so I started hosting events back in like 2003, the winter of it, I think.
That's crazy. It's so long ago to think about. Well, you said MTV. You worked at MTV?
Yeah, I worked in Times Square on Nickelodeon magazine and some other productions.
Wow.
So I was there because I was fluent in like digital stuff back when everything for print was in film. Who do I look at, the camera or you?
Oh, either one.
Okay.
Yeah, if you want to talk to the audience, go for it.
And everybody that was in the industry had been doing everything on film, which means even if you design something on a computer, or if somebody did artwork like physically or whatever, everything would go out to be turned into a film, which would then is what made up the magazine eventually, the way they would do it. And I was there because I was young and I was trained in InDesign and Quark. Like before the other people. Yeah. So I was brought in to do, I was just a kid. I didn't know what I was doing. But I could use the software, which other people couldn't. Because this was like 2000. Yeah. So I lived right in New York right before 9/11. And the time, like, you know, the Twin Towers. Yeah. But anyways, yeah. So I was doing just digital file work, checking to make sure everything was good. Every single night, everybody would send me their files and everything they'd been working on. I would check them. I would upload them to servers and stuff, have the guys. And this is wild, by the way. We would overnight stuff at 8 p.m. to Florida where the printers were for the magazine production. And they would get it by 8 a.m. the next morning.
No shit.
And then they would send us the proofs that day in file format and stuff. Like they must have spent $10,000 a month, probably way more than that, just on overnighting stuff. And
dude.
Man, it's probably way more than that.
Now everything's digital.
Well, I was gonna say, yeah. So we overnighted every single day of the week like that. That was crazy. Like the printer on our floor. This is the one thing that sucks. So I have been working for myself since 2001, like self-employed. But when I worked there, you would go down the hall and be like, I'm gonna go work with like this. I would print things on like $100,000 printer. And anything we wanted, we would have access at like working for MTV and stuff to like a $200,000 camera. Back then it was like these beta machine things where it was walls and you would edit on these Beta Max like things. So you'd have a tape and then a tape and you go back and forth. But money was unlimited. So like nowadays you think like a Red camera is what you probably think of or something, a camera like that is, you know, like $40,000. You're like, that's crazy. Yeah. No. 20 years ago, video stuff was insane. So anyways, we got to play with stuff like that.
Well, I wasn't very into cameras and stuff back then, obviously.
Well, it all sucked back then.
I was a baby then. Yeah. Well, okay, so you kind of always
I'm 45, or 44. I think I'm 44. You also lose track of time when you get old. You don't know how old you are.
Dude, once I hit 20, I started losing track of my age. I have to ask my girlfriend every fucking year, how old am I again? Anyways, so you've always kind of been like a, I guess, creative type, it seems, with the art major and kind of MTV stuff.
I mean, I guess.
Would never label yourself.
It depends what you consider art, depends what you consider creative. Like when I was a kid, I used to draw caricatures at like Six Flags. That was one of my jobs. Or like I did lots of art type jobs where I worked full time as an artist. But it wasn't like all those artsy creative jobs. You're just doing the same thing over and over and over most of the time. Yeah, that's true. I find like hosting car stuff and doing all my stuff way more creative and way more artsy, even though I'm not like a style kid styling out a car. Yeah. I'm creating adventures for people that are like emotional things that are 2 weeks long, like big man trips and all this stuff. You know, I was going to say I get to be so creative and do other things, but I don't think of it that way.
Yeah, just kind of living your life, doing your job. Mm-hmm. So how did I guess from my aspect, I would consider that very creative, but how did that venture you into cars specifically? Like what drew your attention?
You know, I wasn't allowed to mess with cars when I was young. My dad thought they were a huge waste of money. My dad was like a West Point graduate, Olympic athlete, all this stuff. He was very like...
Big brain?
Well, yeah, smart. Like, not just that, like, every single man in the family had to go to West Point and go to a military academy and be an officer in the military. My dad and that stuff was very serious. And I was like way off the other end. Artist, you know, doing all this wacky stuff. My dad was right in the end that art school was stupid and I wouldn't end up doing it. But I was allowed to make my own mistakes. Yeah, my dad didn't like them. I got into off-road vehicles and I really, really wanted a Jeep. So I bought a Jeep. That was a big ordeal. But my dad really, really didn't want me to have a Jeep. Got my own
opinions on Jeeps for sure.
I went and earned money and did all this stuff, and my parents helped me out. And my parents have always been supportive and stuff. My dad just hated cars like that. But my dad loved cars. He liked Mercedes, little sports cars, and different stuff. Anyways, he didn't like wasteful stuff, even though that's so wasteful. So anyways, got a Jeep.
Definitely argue that for sure.
I really enjoyed my Jeep. I went up to college in Colorado, so I lived in Denver. And the Jeep was so much fun up there. And then I moved back to Texas after New York and all this stuff. I ended up moving back to Texas. Man, I hated off-roading in Texas. It was hot, so many bugs. I didn't like the people as much. I didn't like the trails, obviously, because they're not nearly as cool as Colorado. Right. So I loved vehicles, and I loved working on them, and I loved like overbuilding stuff and ripping it apart because it was so hard. And cars are just kind of addictive, I guess you could say, that you're just always looking for the next thing, researching. It's such a challenge that I got into that. And when I was in Texas after all my Jeep stuff, I owned that Jeep for like 25 years, by the way, or something insane. Damn. I just got rid of it 2 years ago. I turned it into this big, crazy rock crawler, stretched wheelbase. It was super long, all this nut stuff. So it got terrible for the street, which was the first vehicle I destroyed like that.
It's just a ripple effect.
Yeah, LS swap, you know, like big axles and stuff. So anyways, went and I got into cars, and I was like, I wanted a fast car because I'd ridden in a couple cars, and I was like, oh, this is cool. So anyways, I started making a lot of money. So I was watching like Speed TV. So I went and bought myself like an Evo 8, like the day they came out. And my first drift car was a Skyline, I think. I bought an R33 Skyline and I didn't know what it was. And like, I'm old, so there's lots of stories.
Yeah.
But I was going to say, to elaborate on that slightly, a friend of mine was into cars like that. And he's like, oh, I was just up in Dallas and I lived in San Antonio. He's like, this guy has this like weird car, the Skyline. It's so cool. Like, you're not supposed to have them here in America. He's like, I wish I could afford that. And just kept telling me how cool it was.
Blowing people's minds at the time.
Yeah, he was just like freaking out. And I was like, how much is it? And the guy's like, it's 10 grand. And I was like, that's not a lot of money. And I was like, go get it for me. So I just I gave him money to go grab me this car.
Wait, what were you doing at the time as far as work?
Real estate stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Anyways, I ended up with this Skyline, and which back in 2003 was super rare. Like nobody had Skylines. And I just had this dumb R33 like black car, and
you drove it on the street?
Yeah, I drove it on the street.
So was it like, did you make it legal somehow, or just risk it?
There was nothing.
Just risk it.
Yeah, I drove it for years. The cops didn't care about that stuff back then. I would just go get temp tags and stuff. And like you could go to the DMV and buy a year of temp tags, and they just write them out for each month, and you could buy 12 at a time.
I didn't know that was a thing.
Can't do it anymore.
I wish.
Yeah, but I told the DMV exactly what I was doing. I was like, I can't figure out how to make this car legal, and they're like, well, you can buy temp tags, because they just want to sell you something. So anyways, I got a bunch of temp tags, and I did that for a few years. And like the back window, I would tape them up, and there would be like 15 temp tags shoved in, because every month I'd just jam another temp tag in there. But anyways, long story short, I drove that thing. And then I drifted that. I drifted an M3 that I got back then, like an E36. So I started drifting an E36 M3 like back in 2003 or so. And then I modified them too much and they got really unreliable. I loaned my Skyline to a friend in like 2005 for Formula D, and he totaled it into a wall. There's famous pictures of that. I mean, like at FD, Texas, he knocked a K-rail like 10 feet.
What year was that?
I think 2005.
2005.
It was the driver of the original El Camino.
It'll
be hard to find. Derek Rogers.
Okay. Yeah, well, we should be able to find
So anyways, I did that. He ran from the whole ordeal. That was real awkward. They forklift the car off track, and he just like... But then I was friends with him for years, and then that was the thing.
Did that set the friendship?
What?
Did that set the friendship off, or?
It was way more complicated than that.
Yeah.
He's a really odd guy.
Okay.
He's really, really smart, but like, anyways, that's a whole thing.
Yeah, you ain't got to go deep into that.
He's fine. All right, so yeah, anyways, I just had a very different journey than everybody else. I was originally like street drifting my Evo, which was not easy. And remember, no one could drive back then or tell you how to drive. We would just watch option videos.
Yeah.
That we ordered from Japan, and then you would kind of try and figure out what's going on, and like you're like, oh, they're pulling the handbrake to do something, and you'd pull the handbrake for months.
Actually, my next question is, what kind of was the drift scene back then?
No, it was awful. And then just one day you're like, oh man, I gotta press the clutch in, and like you'd make that epiphany, and like that's how hard drifting was back then, because there was no one to show you, no one to talk. The only thing you could watch was like videos.
Yeah. That's actually how I approached it. Not even in English. Oh, that's true.
Yeah, it was very difficult.
Translate everything.
Yeah, and it was cut wildly and stuff. You couldn't see what they were doing necessarily. So it was very different. Way different than now. Drifting is so accessible and easy now. No one could get good at drifting back then within even just a couple years. It was too hard.
Oh, yeah, because you're all on not even cut knuckles at the time, probably. Didn't even have the knowledge to do that.
Yeah, we didn't start using knuckles until after I was done with Formula D and Nopi drift and this stuff, and like maybe my first year of D1 or after. So I didn't get knuckles on a car until like 2009.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Holy shit. So, okay, so what
so the
was
first 6
FD
years
like?
Was with no...
Oh.
I drove an FD, just like one event with... an SR20 2871 pump gas car, made like 350 wheel. And back then, everybody else would rent like road. I was at the Atlanta track. Road Atlanta. That's an easy one. So you would go and everybody else would drive for like 2 days beforehand, all the big teams who have more money, better drivers, better cars, better teams, better everything. And then you would get like 2 practice laps after they've been driving for days. You get 2 practice laps, kind of figure out your car, and then you do your 2 qualifying. So maybe you'd get 4 laps. And it was really hard, but there was just a top 16. There was no top 32. There wasn't different classes. You didn't have to really have a license back then in the early days. And then after '06, I think you needed a license. I think I drove my car in '07, maybe, Road Atlanta.
Okay.
And I was always just someone that went out and just wanted to drive for fun with the best people. Because if you even wanted to tandem with someone, you'd have to travel like to a different state sometimes.
No way.
There wasn't even anyone to really tandem with back then that could link a track and do everything. Probably right around '06 to '07, people could start tandeming.
Damn.
Before that, people thought they would be tandeming, but they'd be 50 yards apart, just kind of squiggling around.
Right.
You weren't anywhere close.
And you were still seeing, like, in the option videos, the tandeming from Japan back then at this time, right?
Oh, everybody knew tandem existed. It's just we weren't good
so
enough.
it just wasn't
Yeah, and even back then, the guys that got into Formula D got to drive so much more than everybody, and with the best drivers, the Formula D driver skill level shot up drastically.
That's nuts to think about, because now
And the
it's the
grassroots
opposite.
level did not take off drastically at first because we didn't have the great cars. We didn't know what they were doing. And the Formula D guys all fed off each other. So they got really good really fast. And they were all BMX guys. So they had excellent like inner balance and stuff.
Yeah.
And there were groups of people and they were all teaching each other stuff. And the
Yeah, people to
grassroots guys
lean
did
off
not
of.
take off. And then the grassroots guys probably didn't start getting really good until 2010 to 2012, you started to see random grassroots guys that you would just like, wow, that guy's good, but he's not a professional.
Yeah. He deserves to be out there.
They don't deserve it or anything like that. You just like, before, it was really rare to see someone really good at a local event. Unless they were already like an FD driver or something. And then probably somewhere around 2014 maybe, there was a lot of good grassroots drivers like banging around that really knew what they were doing, and people were actually tandeming.
Gap. That's crazy.
Yeah. And then once you hit a Seto time period, which was probably like 2016, 17, there's so many people getting so good on a Seto that everybody fed off each other. And now you go to an event and there's 25 guys at one event that rip. And that was not like that 15 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
There was only a few guys. And you knew exactly who they were and everything else. So anyways.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Nowadays, there's a lot of people that are really good out there, but it wasn't like
it's
that
like
a long time
it's
ago.
almost completely flipped, because now if you drive FD, you hardly get the laps. But if back then FD was, you got most of the laps. You were
Well, not
the
just that. If
experienced
you're an
driver.
FD ever, like take Chelsea for instance, he's a friend of mine. So I just mean like I've seen him drive so much. He drives like 150 days a year. Because he's doing RTR demos, he's doing people's events. Like I paid him to come over and do an event with us as like a guest driver. He's doing the Formula D rounds. He's doing his own stuff, other places. He's flying overseas and driving. He's driving more than 25 different cars a year probably. He's driving FD cars, grassroots cars, stock Miatas. You know, like the sky's the limit. So the FD guys actually have been driving the most out of everybody forever, especially the super sponsored people because they're doing so much stuff.
I feel like that would
Pro 2 guys
wouldn't that
probably
be
don't
only
get to
at
drive
the
it.
highest level though, because like you just said, the Pro 2 guys and all that, they're kind of scraping
the
it
guys
by,
that are
so they're not getting the laps.
Yeah, you're right. The guys that are struggling like in Pro Spec or the back of the pack in Pro 1, they probably don't get a lot of drive time because they're barely keeping their car together. They're struggling on budget. They're not pushing like for some company that's paying them to do all these demos and everything else. There are a lot of people that struggle and stuff.
Yeah. Okay, let me ask your opinion on the whole.
And one thing I was going to say, back in the day too, you have to remember the reason why so many of us were not good and it took so long is there wasn't anything to copy. Everyone was probably pretty poor then. We were all very young. 20-year-olds just don't have as much money as 30 and 40-year-olds. Now you have a lot more people with disposable income and their parents see it as a thing that they can do, so they support it more. It's just a very different scene than it was. There was only 100 people drifting in Texas 20 years ago. Now there's 1,000.
Yeah, we weren't polluted with the mass amount of parts and the mass amount of track. Like, I say it a lot on my podcast. Where I live, dude, within 3 hours, any direction, it doesn't matter. I have at least 6 tracks that I can make it to very quickly. So, like, I'm spoiled.
Wasn't like
endlessly.
that back then.
Yeah, exactly. So I love to hear, especially.
I
since
literally
was
had to
just a
start
fucking
hosting
kid.
events so I could drive.
That's crazy.
You know what I mean? Like it just they didn't exist in any capacity other than just my friends with Daily Drifter. And I used to regularly like drive to Atlanta or drive to New Mexico or drive wherever to go drive other events.
Shows how much balls it took back then compared to now. Well, is there anything from back then that is different now that you wish would have never changed inside the drift scene?
Nah, everything's better now. I think a lot of people maybe harken back to the days when like drifting was more like 2003 Japanese style or this or that. I mean, like, we're so much better off today in most ways, other than like maybe legality of things coming down on us where we can't modify cars as much legally, or we haven't really had to deal with that much. Yeah. But I think we will in the future. I think
Probably
we're doing great. What?
Probably not here in Texas. I wouldn't assume. This everything.
You can't buy a diesel delete kit anything like for any vehicle anymore. You know, like it's probably they've already started coming down on that for gasoline powered stuff with standalone ECUs and different parts and stuff and headers and everything else. Once the hammer drops, it's going to drop very quickly. But we'll see. Maybe it won't. Maybe it will.
I'm hoping not. I just, with the whole history of Texas itself,
it's but if you
that's a whole
if you're around, it's a $15,000 or $20,000 ticket if you get caught with a deleted truck by DOT and stuff.
No,
you know what I mean? And like, you can't trade those trucks in anymore to a dealership. If you sold one, you could be fined really big. It's a big deal.
Holy shit. Okay. Well, we ain't got to go down that rabbit hole. Nope. But jumping back on the FD thing, what do you say to, because we talked about Pro 2 guys and being low budget and stuff like that. What do you say to the guys that are wanting to pursue FD as a career-based option? Because myself, I would always steer people away from that if that's their only source of a career.
I have a really long history with that. So I was licensing people for more than a decade to be Formula D drivers. Mm-hmm. I was giving them a package when they would win my Lone Star Drift Series where I'd take them to SEMA, give them a clutch sponsorship, coilover sponsorship, tires. I don't know everything. Garrett Turbo sponsorship. We'd give them more than $10,000 in parts. I would introduce them to like Kenda tires and different tire manufacturers and say like, hey, if there's anybody you really want to talk to, I know a lot of people in the industry. I'll sit you down with them. So I'd have a list of things they would get for free. And then if they had any people they really wanted to talk to, like Magna Charger or something, we would go sit down and talk to them. And we licensed a lot of people. The most successful were probably Chelsea Denofa, Ben Hobson, Nick Novak, and some others. A lot of people that weren't successful. A lot of people that wanted to make it professional, but less than just a few percent of the people are going to. It's not a very good career path because probably everyone outside of Chelsea on that list has to pay heavily to be within the sport.
Yes.
It's not a profession in the way you get paid. Like it's very, very few people are going to get paid to be drivers.
It would have to get to the point of like monster truck style stuff where you don't even own the vehicle. You're showing up, which is kind of getting to that point.
Yeah, that's how Chelsea is.
Yeah,
but yeah,
exactly.
But I mean, I've never been at that point. I was never paid to drive an FD or anything like that. I really can't say that much. I'm guessing, but I see it a lot. But yeah, I would think that everybody outside of the top 13 pays to be there. Probably everybody in Pro Spec has to pay for tires, I'm guessing. There's still people in Pro 1 that pay for tires. So yeah, I don't know. I would if there was new people that wanted to get into it, I would say
start a business first.
Yeah, there you go. Start a business, become a professional in something, and use it as like a fun career. There's very few people that actually are smart enough, have like innate balance skills and hand-eye coordination and like the actual drive to do something for a decade to make it where you really made it. Because guys like Chelsea or something, it probably did take them a decade of drifting to make it to the level where they got to the point where they're being paid and everything like they are.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's not statistically a good thing to do.
I'd say so.
Yeah.
All right,
but by the way, almost all forms of racing are rich people going racing and people using their disposable income to do that. And remember, that's what you're doing. It's not a career. Like maybe you make it a career because you own a parts business and sell stuff, or you work on cars and you're a mechanic or whatever it is that you do. But it's way easier to probably go be a doctor than try and create a business surrounding, your professional racing career. There's way more doctors out there than there are professional racers in the world, or lawyers or anything else.
You gotta
And
be a
there's
certain
way
type of
more
psycho.
money. Yeah.
Well, I guess because the only reason I bring that up a lot is because
Or have a dad that's a doctor. That's way better.
yeah, there you go. But yeah, only reason I bring that up a lot is because I do see a lot of people even in the comments that are like, I just want to go drive with the best drivers. I just want to see how I stack up with all of these people, drive at the highest level, blah blah blah, and that's like their only push for it. And
Yeah, that's kind of a
just doesn't
bullshit
make
cop
sense
out.
to me.
Why does you deserve to drive with the best drivers in the world if you haven't gone to that level and done everything they've done? The guys in the top 15 of like Formula D have put so much work, sweat, tears, life, years, learning, everything on the line. Those drivers don't deserve to just jump in the ring with them and all that stuff if they're not good enough.
Right.
I don't know. I sound so pessimistic sometimes.
No.
I'm like, that's kind of bullshit. Like, you don't deserve to jump in the ring with Mike Tyson and get beat up by him.
Yeah, or get your ear bit off.
Yeah.
Well, I like that even when back then you were doing
one thing.
that.
I was going to
go
say,
for it.
there are so many good drivers in the world. You go to local events now, there's dudes that are as good as FD drivers, just like driving at local events. You guys are so spoiled if you want to drive with the best drivers. Yeah.
Yeah, that have no curiosity to go drive with the bigger drivers either.
Yeah.
Which kind of sucks. Because then you'll never find out the real top dog and stuff like that. But
I never thought about it that way.
Yeah,
like who's the real top dog?
I've always thought
James
about
Dean.
that. Well, yeah, of course. Or Peter Visick. That's probably the only two that would compare. Yeah, I've thought about that a lot growing up, like even for football and for baseball, because baseball was a big sport.
Oh, by
for
the
me.
way, on Drift Week, for instance, I'm just tandeming with James Dean. There's so many opportunities. I was at Ebisu, and I was just driving with all my buddies, and then Osbo comes out, and we go tandem with Osbo on Minami, on whatchamacallit, on Toge.
Yeah.
And I think we're on North Course, but like we're just tandem with Osbo. Osbo is a fantastic driver. Same thing, like we're up there with Andrew Gray, we're up there with Nakamura, we're up there, like we brought Yokoi out multiple times to drive, if you know who Yokoi is.
Yeah.
Nakamura. In Texas, we've had Chelsea, Von Gidden, Ryan Turek, all these people. On Drift Week, we have Matt Field driving with us that you can just tandem with Matt Field for fucking 2 weeks. It's wild. So I was gonna say,
arguably that's the best route to go now if you're wanting to match up with those bigger drivers.
Yeah, I'm not trying to promote Drift Week. What I'm saying is you go to where those drivers are and you know they'll be. And if you're good enough to drive with them, you can go hang out with them and do 100 laps with them. And they're going to high five you at the end if you're not going to crash into them and be a moron and have a good time. We have so many good drivers we have access to now. You just have to travel and do stuff and be where they are, not just at your local track. But it's very unlikely that if you're just going to jump into FD to try yourself out against the best drivers in the world, that you'll ever get to them, because you got to learn to drive, go do Pro-Am. After Pro-Am, go do Pro Spec. So there's a couple years of learning to drive. At least 1 year of Pro-Am to get your license. You're at least 3 years in now. Your 4th year is going to be in Pro Spec. You're probably going to get stuck for another year in Pro Spec. That's year 5. Then you're in Pro 1. You're going to get the shit beat out of you in Pro 1. And you're
for
not
at least 2 years.
Yeah, you're probably not even going to qualify. I was going to say, you're going to be year 7 by the time you get to line up with the best at Pro 1.
Mm-hmm. And still not making it.
I sound so pessimistic. I'm sorry.
Dude, but it's true, though. Like, people need to... That's why I started this.
There's other places. Like, you can go drive with Chelsea all over the place. We just had Chelsea in Texas, and everyone could go tandem with Chelsea if they weren't an idiot. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
you go tandem with them.
And anyone could go talk to him. He's super open.
So there's so many avenues to go do that. And you're going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to make it to Pro 1. You could go drive with all these other guys so much.
Right.
I know Matt Field's probably up at Sonoma doing the Winter Jam thing, or you go to Hyperfest and drive with a bunch of these guys, or Grid Life or whatever.
They all post a schedule. Mm-hmm. You got plenty of options to find them out there anywhere. So
I'm jaded though.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's jump on your events. So when you said you started hosting them specifically just so you could drive. Mm-hmm. Okay, so at the time...
I would never host events if I couldn't drive.
Gotcha.
If I don't drive events, I'm not hosting events.
So how do you balance that then?
Oh, it's
because that's what I've interviewed a lot of event hosts, and every single one of them are like, you kind of have to pick and choose one almost. So what is your balance and how you approach that?
I've done so many events that it's not so hard. I even compete in my own series and stuff. I drive at Drift Week. I do all this stuff. I'm probably the only grassroots full-time event host in the nation. I don't know if that one's true. So. That might be true. I honestly don't know. But yeah, if I didn't get to drive, I wouldn't do it. But I would say that after hundreds of events, because our original events, we had 10 people driving at them. It was real easy to host an event with 10 people. You just lose money and you drive.
Yeah.
And everyone drives. And then I've hosted more than 250 or 300 events.
Damn. That's crazy.
So I was going to say, at that point, it's not very hard to host an event and drive.
Yeah.
We have staff such as John Yim and all my guys and my judges and stuff at my local events where we do comps. Everything's very turnkey. We have this fancy bracketing system that we don't do qualifying. You've ever heard of all that stuff?
Yeah.
I have gate staff, like we have grid workers that have been grid working with us for many events. Every once in a while we get a new one. We have a guy, Kiro, right now that's really good. And if people are trained to do their job and everything is taken care of, I can go drive. And then whenever there's a problem, I'm directly to the problem putting out a fire. We're also have staff to do that and stuff. And all the drivers are firefighters as well, getting to it because we all have bottles in our cars and stuff. But yeah, we self-police pretty well and we do stuff. And
yeah. I've always kind of related that to Rob Dyrdek because whenever he started the whole point system for skateboarding, it seemed to iron out a lot of the issues that the spectators had with the sport. And it seems like you've kind of ironed, not necessarily by a point system, but the way you run a competition and run events, it seems like you have that ironed completely out. And I would say
every time you ask a question or say something like this, it's going to lead down a rabbit hole. You finish your thing and then I'll go off.
Well, no, I think FD and a lot of these bigger event hosts could take after what you do because it seems like you've found the way to make it run smoother. And if you added live stream to it or something like that.
I'll never do a live stream. 2, FD can't do what we do because FD needs to be a professional series, qualifying those people, getting them all stacked up. People that do FD, that's their fucking lives. They have
I wouldn't say take qualifying
millions of dollars into it. Yeah, I was going to say, we're just a laid back grassroots thing. FD can't learn anything from us. All I do is since I'm at my events, I'm a very driver-focused thing, which means I'm really bad at spectators. Like Dave Egan is amazing at spectators, but probably not as good at the driver, keeping them happy, except they have lots of spectators to watch. But since I drive, and Dave is an amazing driver,
right.
But I'm super driver-spectated, driver-focused. And what that means is I don't want my drivers sitting in grid. I don't want my drivers fixing cars. I don't want my drivers crashing cars. I don't want my drivers doing anything that's going to make them unhappy. So I deleted qualifying because when you're in Texas, you're sitting in the car for an hour during qualifying, getting nervous, freaking out, doing 2 laps in 2 hours or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it's not fun at all. So we delete that. I want the competitions to take no more than an hour and a half to 2 hours for a competition for a weekend. So we have 2 competitions in the weekend. Each day gets like an hour and a half to 2 hours. We can run literally 50 cars that fast through the battles. I want the worst drivers to get the most seat time and for never the first place guy to go against the 50th place guy because that only hurts the 50th place guy's feelings and the first place guy is going to wreck his car on accident or look like an idiot trying to follow this guy. So everything we do is to make everybody have more fun and to eliminate all the bad parts of drifting. I created Texas street legal so that you can't tune the car too much. You can't change injectors. You can't put bigger turbos on it. You can't do all these things, not because it makes the cars equal, because you could still go get a C6Z06 and rape a Miata, but so that the people aren't blowing up their cars, so that the cars are reliable, so they just have seat time cars kind of thing. So that new people everyone that got into drifting in 2003 literally had to build a car from scratch. They had to learn to be a mechanic. They had to learn how to tow a car to events. They had to learn how to own a truck, own a trailer, load everything.
Maintenance everything.
Yeah, maintenance everything, swap an engine, tune a car, do the suspension. Drifting is actually way easier now because you can just go buy a Z, stock injector, stock tune, stock everything, put coilovers on and little tie rod spacers, and go drive with your friends.
Yeah, and they're bulletproof.
Yeah, so I was going to say, it's just a different world now. I don't know. That was such a convoluted message. But anyways, yeah. So I just try and delete things that I think are unfun from the events. so that everybody is, like we got rid of a line. If you've been to a lot of drift events, there's always a line of cars to get on track.
Great. Yeah.
And like say at Summit Point, we were at Summit Point, and they'd never done hot lapping at Summit Point on Shenandoah. So people that had been there before, like in doing Drift Week there, they're like, oh my God, I've never done, like just drifted the track and gone around and done my thing. I always go drift 2 corners, stop, wait in line for 10 minutes, do 2 corners, stop, wait in line for 10 minutes. So
boring doing it that way.
Well, and I was going to say there's a lot of reasons to do that and stuff, but I don't have fun doing that. I don't want to sit in line. I'm so spoiled. So we just hot lap and stuff. And like on Drift Week, there's people that they're like, I got more laps on Drift Week than I did all year long, maybe multiple years long, because there's no lines. You're only driving with good vetted drivers for the most part. There's so many good people to tandem with. So Drift Week is something I went way down the rabbit hole of like, I only want people that are good to tandem with. I don't want to sit in line whatsoever. We normally only have 40 drivers. So there's never a line. Sometimes it's actually hard to find people to tandem with because, by day 11, there's a bunch of people broken or like slowed down, so there's not enough people on track. So anyways.
Dude, that's nuts.
I'm rambling.
No, you're good. This is awesome. So I guess from doing all of those events, where did you originally come up with the idea of Drift Week? Because I know Taylor was involved a little bit in that.
There was a bunch of people. We were sitting around at 4 Point Sheraton or whatever next to Houston Police Academy. All the YouTubers were in town drifting one of my events. Trevor, Taylor, and Adam. And we were sitting around a fire. And I was like, you guys are pieces of shit. I was like, you guys have so many. I'm so mean all the time. No, I was like, you guys have so much power. We need to do something and sit down and think. All you guys are going to like make silly jokes all night. We have all you guys that are like powerhouses sitting here and one thing, because everybody keeps making jokes. I'm like, shut up. Let's come up with an idea. And maybe Trevor, somebody like, they're like, why don't we do a tour like Drag Week? And I was like, okay. And we kind of started to refine the idea. And it's so hard to keep everyone focused. I'm like,
oh yeah,
fucking focus.
Absolutely not.
So that was a forced focus committee. And everybody we came up with a bunch of ideas. And I don't remember them, but that was the best idea. And I was like, you guys have the power, because we were getting track time for free at the time. We would just ask tracks. And we're like, hey, we're going to come YouTube. They're like, come on by on a Tuesday. And it was really cool.
Holy shit.
I was like, we have the power to do this stuff. We were all getting together, and I was doing all the logistics of everything, and everybody was flying in, and I would provide cars for us and stuff. We built that Corvette in the 350Z or the 370Z project like that.
Yep.
Not many people were driving those chassis before that. And we were trying to popularize different types of cars and do fun YouTube stuff. But anyways, so yeah, I was like, we need to focus and think and do something useful. And I need to do that again because we need a new good idea. And then we sat on that idea for a year. And I got everybody like on text messages a few times. And I was like, hey guys, let's do this. Yeah. And originally I was trying to push Adam to do it. Because I'm like, Adam, if you do this turnkey, everybody will just like fall in line.
Oh, of course.
And he's like, I don't want to do this. He's like, that sounds...
Damn.
He's like, that's your thing, Aaron. Like, you host events, you do this. And I was like, yeah, but I don't want to do it. I want to drive. And I kept bugging everybody, and no one was going to do it. So finally, after a year or two, I was talking to everybody. I'm like, fine, I will do this, but I'm not going to be responsible. So I was like, I will host everything, and I will do it, but everybody's on their own for the events and stuff. And then eventually, I just slowly was like in charge of everything because no one did anything. Not one email, not one line of conversation. No one would do anything.
You could, I'm telling you, when the first Drift Week came out, you could physically see the stress consuming you.
Oh, of me? Yeah.
It was insane.
So like, I went out and spent like $6,000 in tire changing equipment and, all this stuff, fitted out the trailer, tools, hired staff, insured some tracks. Some of the tracks I got for free and like they let us ride on their insurance. Some of them we paid for. And we did it super budget. And, but I ended up definitely in charge. I tried so hard not to be, because there's better people to do a lot of this stuff. And then it worked out. So yeah, I don't really remember whose exact idea, but it was Trevor, Taylor, Adam, and I. We sat down. I forced everyone to focus being mean. And then we made it happen. And then Chelsea jumped in there very early at some point, but he wasn't at the original meeting, but I'm sure he probably had the idea as well.
Right.
And then we had, because I know Chelsea wasn't there the first time, and then we started having people claim it was their thing or do whatever, and some of them probably have a bunch of validity on it. And I never wanted to call it Drift Week, but it was the only thing that made sense. It was going to be like Lone Star Drift Adventure Club or like all these different things. And everybody's like, no one knows what that means, Aaron. So like Trevor, I think it was Trevor. Trevor made me call it Drift Week, and he was correct on that. But I thought it was super derivative of Drag Week. And I was like, that just seems like copying. And they're like, yeah, but it just makes sense.
That's the vibe, though.
And they were like, this is nothing like Drag Week.
Oh, no,
this is
not
2
at all.
freaking weeks long. They do like one pass and then get to the next track. We're doing just driving and driving.
All day.
So it was different enough and it made sense. And then we just every time I was super stressed out wanting to iterate on it and make it different. Mm-hmm. And we did that. Everyone was very different for a while. And then I was like, man, we're getting high enough in the numbers. Let's just do what works really well.
Right.
Because originally we were like almost going coast to coast. The first
two
were
the first
so
one was
hard.
gnarly. So many miles in between tracks, and
we would finish a track at 7 p.m. in Houston and needed to be 8 hours away in New Orleans or however far that is. Maybe it's 6 hours. But with the trailer and all of our gear, it's 8 hours. Mm-hmm. We would leave at like 9 p.m. from Houston after we pack up and be on track the next morning at 6 a.m. So I mean, it's literally just driving the next venue.
How did y'all sleep?
Yeah. We were like taking turns sleeping in the truck on the way in the supports vehicle. And then the other people would leave a little bit earlier. They'd leave at 5 p.m. if they needed to from the track. Okay. Most of those dudes are just insane. Like Matt Field, I don't think sleeps. He's an animal.
Well, there were so many angles as far as content forward, especially the first Drift Week. But what were a lot of the hiccups that you experienced yourself that didn't necessarily get highlighted in your content?
All the hiccups were highlighted.
Oh, they were?
Yeah, we burned down that car. We had a lot of problems. Matt Field and Luke fought, and like I think they didn't actually come to punching, but they acted like it.
Yeah.
Probably the rest of us were egging them on, saying they're bitches or something, making
Peer
it worse.
pressure's a bitch.
Some people are trying to diffuse it, and some probably trying to instigate it. But there's a lot of hot heads on there. I don't know, it was fun.
Yeah. What were a lot of the takeaways you had from the first year going into the next year that you made sure to change? Because I know
Drift Week?
you talked about it a little bit, but
on Drift Week, after number 2, I was like, this is getting dumb. I was like, we need to sleep. I was like, I'm just brutal. Because I set all the schedules and stuff.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like, say on Drift Week 1, the only days I could get, I got Honda Musselman in Tucson, Arizona, which is, 8 hours from Riverside, California. And Riverside, California is like, the only date we can give you is the 9th. And I'm like, but we're on track the 8th in Arizona. And they're like, sorry, that's it. So I'm like, oh my God.
Good luck.
So I'm like, okay, so we finished in Arizona at 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. And then we're on track the next morning at 8 a.m. And like Matt Field had to remove his torque tube famously. That night, had to get one from Phoenix over to Tucson. And then he drove 160 miles an hour throughout the night and passed us. It only took him like 3 hours or something to get from Tucson to LA. It was bonkers. Yeah, so anyways.
Yeah. Well, you kind of do it like in sections now, or I guess like areas of the country.
So and
like
before I
Northeast
wanted to go as far as distance as possible. Mm-hmm. And, like if there's 10 tracks in Texas, we're doing 1 and then we're jumping to the next state. So we were trying to do a sampling of things because I drive in Texas all the time. I was like, I don't want to just do Texas. I want to go everywhere. Well, now we do regions. And it's way more enjoyable. There's people that are like, oh, the 1 and 2 were the best because we went everywhere. And I'm like, God, we were so miserable.
Yeah.
Like
I feel like it builds that FOMO factor a little bit more of like people missing out on it because like, oh, they're in my area of the country. Like I should be applying to be on this or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think that would help.
That's so weird to me that people from like LA want to do the West Coast one. I'm like, go do the East Coast one. Go do all the tracks you're never going to do.
Yeah.
Go do the farthest away stuff possible. Yeah, Drift Week 2 was supposed to be in Japan, and then COVID happened, and I'm so glad I didn't try an international one. And
why do you say that? Like,
I could explain what Drift Week Japan would be, but I just feel like I keep going off on tangents.
You're good.
Well, okay.
This is
If
4.
I was going to do a Drift Week Japan, the drivers can't really necessarily take the cars from track to track on the street as easily as America.
That's true.
In America, half the cars are illegal. They don't have plates. They don't have people with licenses in them, probably. It's just like a shit show.
Right.
In Japan, it'd be really hard to get away with that. We would probably trailer the cars from track to track. I would completely have to give up on the ability of being in charge because I can't talk to the tracks and have contracts and everything. I can't insure the stuff either, so I would have to have an intermediary for that taking care of it, which could fall apart at the last second because I'd have to trust that they are doing their job. And there's people that probably spend $100,000 doing Drift Week. There's rich people out there that you have no idea.
Dude.
Like, for instance, we went to a strip club on Drift Week 6, and like Chris Finch walks in with like a stack of money under his arm this big. I'm sure they're just $1 bills, but it's still like $5,000.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's still thousands and thousands of dollars. People are getting private rooms. We probably spent $70,000 at that place in one night or something. Through the Vegas one, they rented out the whole top floor of the Palms Casino.
Oh my God.
You know, like Chris Finch owns a track in Pahrump, so we went and did a shitbox derby. The teams bought junk cars and then drove them and destroyed them and left them there. And there's teams, probably spending $3,000 or $4,000 on a car for, like it to blow up after a short period of time.
Yeah.
And that's nothing to some people with a lot of money. So I was going to say there are some people that spend a lot of money doing Drift Week.
Yeah, so like if you did
but they would do a
eventually
lot
do
of money
Japan,
just going to Vegas to party. They'd spend $10,000 a night.
Yeah. So do you ever see the ability of doing the Japan trip gonna happen?
Oh,
possibly?
I would rather. Oh, so to get back on that further,
Yeah.
And then I would need to provide the cars for the drivers. So I would need to have turnkey packages
that's
for a lot of
true.
guys. Yeah, you could potentially do that, but then again, you have someone that can completely fail you. And I can tell you first off, if you go to Ebisu, and like not to throw Sidex under the bus, but I was there on our last Matsuri, and they just forgot to order tires for all their people. So none of their people had tires.
No.
And all those people, they'd spent hundreds of thousands of dollars. The LZ crew, Jordan and Jimmy Oaks and all those dudes and Grant, they were all at the track. I don't know if Grant works with them, but all the other guys did. They didn't have tires, and they were freaking out because they went to Power Vehicles. Power Vehicles is like, boom, get fucked. Like, you're not our customer. We don't sell you stuff. So they just couldn't drive for days. And if you think about that, if you book an overseas trip to go drifting and you can't get tires or do whatever.
All of that falls apart.
Yeah, so they're going to, up garage in a rental car and getting 2 tires at a time or 4 tires at a time, and like a little teeny tiny,
Oh man,
like micro car, and you just waste all your time. So again, those trips are super expensive. A JZX there for those guys now costs 20 something grand, and if they only went for 7 days, and you're at the airport, you're jet lagged or whatever, you only have 4 days of driving or whatever, and if you lose 2 to that. So anyways, my point was I can't have failure points in Drift Week.
Right.
So
it's
on a
too big
typical,
of an ordeal.
Yeah, on a typical Drift Week, to give you an example of failure points, once we got to Drift Week 3, I had Valino tires just do all the tire stuff. And for Drift Week 3, containers spiked. So they collected money, and they normally have a supply chain of bringing in containers. A container costs $2,500 or something to ship. Tires are however much they are a piece, but if you're ordering 1,000 of them, that's at least $100,000, of tires or whatever. Containers spiked to $24,000 a container, and we had to order multiple containers. I think we brought in 2 for that one. So it's $50,000 or $48,000 in just shipping on that, and they didn't adequately plan. So something on the back end of a Drift Week, we had $48,000 of unintended or unexpected expenses.
Yeah.
And luckily, I don't touch tire money. I don't want a cut of it. I don't want to mess with it. I just have somebody else do it turnkey, and I trust them. But I was biting bullets or sweating bullets or whatever. Because up until probably a week before Drift Week, the tires were not necessarily coming in because of COVID. You had the port problems, no one was doing it. And we ordered those things probably 6 months in advance. And they would normally come in, a month or two. They were like 4 months late or something. I don't remember. But say they're 4 months late, and they showed up like 7 days before the event. And we're all just like, there's nothing we can do at that point. That's $250,000 in tire stuff or something like that. You can't go find another 1,000 tires stateside at that point because Kendo was out.
Hoping and praying, bro.
Yeah, so like I was just fingers crossed, sweating bullets, and you're just like this is in God's hands now. But it's one of those things that the problems become so enormous that you can't fix them.
Yeah.
There's no fixing 1,000 tires. in the Pacific Northwest, which I actually did have to do that on Drift Week 2. But luckily, there's the first Drift Week was 14 drivers, and I was like, let's add like another double that and see if I can do it. So we had 27 on Drift Week 2, and I did have a tire problem where I had to come up with all the tires like 2 weeks before the event. And also,
did you have to come out of pocket for that?
I lost $8,000 doing the tires on that one because I had. Anyways, I don't want to get into that.
Yeah, you're good. Sorry.
But I also let people deal with their own tires on each Drift Week if they wanted to. I'm just like, yo, you are going to have a bad time if you deal with tires on your own. And Dan Brockett was selling Mucho Machos at the time, and it was in the height of the pandemic on Drift Week 2. So he had like Brandon Wicknick and a bunch of other people on that plan.
Right. And
they were shipping the tires to each track as we went. The tires showed up to every track like 3 days after we got there.
Oh,
yeah.
shit.
So they didn't have their tires, and they were just freaking out the whole time. And I'm like, guys, I don't have tires. So they're going off and trying to buy them at discount tires and doing stuff. Which you can imagine how much that would be.
Oh, yeah.
But they did that in bulk to people. So they accidentally did it to a bunch of other people as well. So people thought like, my tire manufacturer is going to go sell a bunch of people. Like, there was other tire manufacturers that keep coming to me and being like, oh, we want to sell tires in Drift Week. And I'm like, no, because like I can't trust you. So anyways.
Just as blunt as that.
Well, yeah,
that's
because
hilarious.
Volino Tires is a very special company where they don't sell road tires. They only do drifting tires and like road race tires and whatever.
Yeah.
They're very small. I know the owner of the company in America because there's an American and Japanese side. Mm-hmm. I know him. He drifts at my events. I know that he will make, that's Mike Jang, I know he will make anything right. And I mean, short of
that's
like
more
if the
important
damn containers
than
wouldn't show up. But I know he's trustworthy and stuff. And he's a small enough company where he can do it. And he's a banker, and this is his side thing.
Oh.
But he makes it all the time work, does anything. I don't have to mess with it. It's turnkey. And I've dealt with other tire companies on Drift Week, and everyone has failed. They absolutely have never done what they said. There's never been another tire company that did not fail on Drift Week.
Wow, that's nuts.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And that's
I couldn't even
just
imagine
people
all
trying
of
to
it.
ship their stuff in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. It just never works.
Okay, so like, what advice do you give some of the new people coming on to Drift Week? Like, prepare for this to go wrong, other than like your car breaking on the way to the next track or stuff like that.
Yeah, the Drift Week cars are pretty reliable now. I didn't even know if any of the cars would make it to the last of track. We actually thought we were doing like an endurance thing and people were going to fall away and we were going to leave them and all this stuff. Or like maybe we would fix the cars, but eventually like 2 people would finish and there'd be a prize like first and second place. But everybody made it.
Yeah.
And typically everyone makes it on a Drift Week. We have people swapping engines. We have people figuring stuff out. Wherever someone lacks, someone else makes up for it. So if you aren't capable enough, you'll spend your way out of the problem. If you are so capable, other people will help you because you'll help them. Like it's just back and forth and back and forth. And when I say spend your way out of the problem, it doesn't mean you're going to be raped by someone. It just means you can go out if you have like a piston come out of your block, and instead of like you taking because we did have people like literally remove the crank from their engine, Seth, and put a new one in his car, and you like disassemble and build an engine at the track. You'll just go out and you'll buy an engine.
Yeah.
And then it's not too hard to put an engine in. So you don't really have to fix anything. So there are people that just like, yo, I need an LS3. And they just go pick an LS3 up from Summit.
Oh, dude, that's crazy.
So, that's a lot easier than trying to fix your shit box
of
that
course,
has a crank falling out of it.
Oh,
and I was going to say, most of the time, like, people break down and shops give people free dyno time, free lifts, free parts. It's insane.
Really?
Yeah, on Drift Week 1, Trevor blew a 2J head apart, like melted it, and like we were over at Fine Art.
Oh, I remember that actually.
And someone just like, the shop next door to them is like, we have a new built 2J head.
Dude, what?
And he's like, sorry, I can't afford that right now. They're like, no, you can just have it. So very often, because people are in Drift Week and people think that's really cool and stuff, people just get the parts a lot of the time. Yeah.
Wow.
Locals give people like junkyard 6.0s and stuff.
Yeah,
multiple times, like someone had a messed up inline 6, 328 motor or whatever. Someone would just drop it off at the track. Somebody make a post and be like, oh my God, we blew this engine up. And somebody's like, I got 3 of them. I'll drop one off at the track.
Dude, that's epic. Hell yeah.
So people really come together on that stuff. So I was going to say very few cars fail Drift Week. The only ones that fail Drift Week typically are like the rotary cars because it's just too hard to find parts. Yeah. So even if someone wanted to, if you need a Turbo 2 transmission, it's really hard to find a Turbo 2 transmission quickly. If you mess up a rotary engine, you're just not going to find whatever's inside of a rotary engine, in like 5 minutes. Exactly. People hold on to the housings and stuff now, and they just don't let the stuff go. And there's not enough shops, scattered around the country in Tennessee to have rotary parts. Exactly. I don't know that, but maybe.
No, there's not.
Yeah, so I was going to say, it's typically just the really rare stuff that really struggles. And the only things that really haven't made it, I think, are like the rotary cars. Most everything else makes it.
Yeah.
That's not picking on rotary cars. They're just rare parts.
Well, I mean.
And they're also pieces of shit. No, I'm joking.
I have one sitting in my driveway that's been sitting there for a year, 2 years now. Like, I haven't touched it, but I got it for a dumb cheap deal, so it'll get touched eventually.
That's the trick. You get it for cheap, and then it's not cheap.
I know, dude. It was some old dude and his son, and they were trying to dive into a project. They had just done a Miata. They like restore cars and stuff, and they were like, "We got this," and we realized we have no idea what we're dealing with, so we're gonna sell it.
I got some like that too.
Yeah,
rotary cars.
Yep.
And then I didn't know what I was doing. I'd get them drivable, and I'd drive them around. I got a Turbo 2 because I always loved the way they looked, and I made this thing run, and like I'm driving it around. And I didn't know anything about it. I was just like, anyways, but I can do basic mechanic stuff. And I got the thing running and stuff. And I messaged my buddy Emilio and I was like, man, this thing is so slow and it's turbo. And he's like, yep. I was like, I thought they were kind of fast. People always say, and he's like, nope. And I was like, it doesn't feel like it makes 150 foot-pounds of torque. He's like, no, they make like 138 or something. Aaron.
Yeah, and mine's an A.
No, I'm like, for the turbo version, he's like, yeah, I don't actually remember what it is, but it was something god-awful low. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, they're really not practical whatsoever. Yeah. You make it, maybe you're for lucky 100,000 miles.
Because I didn't want to modify it. I just thought it'd be fun to drive around a stock one. And it was not fast stock.
Yeah, that's all I want to do is just kind of make it a cool street car. But anyways, but no, on the Drift Week stuff, who would you say has probably gotten the most hell going through Drift Week? Because from my perspective, just seeing the content revolving around it.
Fielding.
Oh, really? Yeah. I was going to say Brandon Wicknick.
Oh, you're right. Probably. Probably Brandon Wicknick.
Fielding, I feel like, has just been a bunch of random little sensors and like little knick-knack stuff that just. There hasn't been major catastrophic failures or anything for him, right?
Depends what you count.
That's fair. Okay.
Like to Brandon Wicknick, swapping engines isn't a problem. So that's not even a big deal. Fielding has had much bigger problems on Drift Week that, like, how do you say? Like, for instance, just driving his S14 on Drift Week 1, these guys on Drift Week 1, it was like 20 degrees out. And in like his S14, you don't realize like they're driving in a sleeping, like with all their clothes on, inside of a sleeping bag, zipped all the way up with their arms sticking out, with their with the feet on the pedals in the sleeping bag.
Just like barely poked out?
No, inside the bag.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, like inside the bag.
Zipped up under your feet.
Yeah, and then they would have to go buy like those Mexican like Indian blankets, the little serape blankets at like the New Mexico gas stations, and then pile those on the firewall to try and keep the cold air off their feet and stuff. I mean, literally freezing to death in the cars, in some of the cars. The guys were literally freezing to death.
Oh, yeah, and the dude in the
you're driving,
C4.
Yeah, they had like real ski equipment, though. They were prepared. So they had like full ski bunny outfits. And like, if you dress properly, it's one thing. Right. Because like I went sailing in sub-zero temperature kind of thing, and I realized very quickly like there is sailing gear made of different material that doesn't hold moisture and stuff. Which is like, just like snowboarding gear takes care of you in the cold with the wind and everything. Right. Fielding is just trying to like add long johns and jeans on to like deal with this freezing cold and the wind.
No.
Yeah. So anyways, I was going to say the elements was hard, the vibration. Some of that stuff is way worse than just, like Dustin Miles did it, I think, with a quick change in sequential. Or some of the people have done it with quick changes and sequentials and stuff. That's brutal. Joseph on Drift Week 8, he was driving, he was like a quarter mile ahead of me, and with my windows in my 5 Series rolled up, driving. It's a quiet car, a 5 Series.
Right.
BMW. I could hear his transmission from a quarter mile away over anything in my car, just like, wee! Because it's got straight gears and stuff. And these guys jump out with earplugs and then noise canceling, like electric over the ear headphones. And they're like, we'd stop, we got burritos, and we're like, hey, what's up? What?
Okay, what did you say?
Yeah.
Oh
There's
my
a bunch
God.
of people that did permanent hearing damage. Oh, Thomas Miata on Drift Week
Yeah.
2, maybe. He drove a quick change, like dog box, V8, basically straight piped car. And he and maybe Rob Goodwin were in the car. And they both said they had permanent hearing damage off that trip. I think they drove 7,000 miles with a dog box and quick change.
Dude, hell no. That's nuts.
I'm just like, no.
And Dustin, like, I was talking to him at PRI because he works for Speed Talk now as, like, the marketing
people?
manager. Yeah. And they're coming out with basically sequential gears that just go into your factory
race car only.
And he was like, perfect thing for Drift Week. I was like, I don't know about it, buddy. That seems a little rough.
Cut versions.
Oh, okay. That may be why. Okay.
Yeah. But
That's
no, I was going to say
though.
that stuff is way worse than working on your car. Like, because you're
dealing with
I don't know
the
if you've ever
annoyances.
driven a car like that. Your bones hurt. Your body hurts. You're so exhausted from like the kinetic energy and vibrations going through your body. It's so crazy.
Yeah. I've never
racing
personally
seats-
driven one.
Yeah, fielding and like people like they have like back damage from racing seats. Remember some of these guys like Brandon Wicknick, I think on Drift Week 1 cleared like 7,500 miles in his car on the street. And
Dude,
it's like
that's nuts.
yeah.
God. Luckily, it's not
Because
that
they
long
drive
anymore.
from their house to the start line, and he lives up in Salt Lake City. So they drive all the way down to Texas, and they do the whole trip, and they drive back.
Dude, fuck that. Y'all are insane for that. Well, what would you say?
We're just really stupid. Not insane.
That's just drifting
Fielding,
in
by the
general.
way, says it the best. He's like, I can't believe I keep forgetting what this is like, and I keep signing up for it. He's like, I only remember the good stuff. I don't remember all this other stuff.
At least he's in a Z now. That thing's got heat and AC,
Yeah.
right? Still, right?
Oh no, he's in his 2J S14 again.
Oh, again? Really?
Well,
You
because
got rid
like,
of that?
no, well, we make these podcasts, or we make the interviews, and we're like, oh, this Z is the greatest thing on earth. It's got heat, AC, it's quiet, all this stuff. And then very quickly you get FOMO because like he was driving that on the trip James Dean was on, and like all these amazing drivers, and you're just watching James Dean like drive a Ray and an LS3 350Z. You're just like, down the street.
Oh, this is boring again.
Yeah. So, and like, I was at Hallett also in my S14, and he's like, I think he had that. No, maybe he had his S14. Anyways, whatever car he has, like, I would be at a track, and my car would be so much faster. He's like, wait for me. And I'm like, I'm not waiting for you.
Hell no.
Like, I'm one of those people that has to be like full throttle down a long straight and then do my entry kind of thing. And like, you feel fun from like the feeling of almost dying and going fast and getting your adrenaline kicking. I don't want to be on a big road course and go up to the first corner, half throttle, waiting for a Z.
Oh, fuck no.
Yeah.
I don't blame you. Well, okay, then what would you suggest is the proper setup for a Drift Week car for anyone looking to get into it?
Oh, it just depends what kind of person it is.
Yeah.
If they're older and their back hurts, you definitely don't want to do a race car. If you're really out there, like there's some guys like Joseph Janik who are getting so good, so fast. They're young. They're used to action sports. They can take the abuse on their body. They have money. They want to get really good and have the full experience. They want a race car.
Right.
You know what I mean? In fact, he brings 2 cars, so he has a backup. So he'll pay an entry fee for one of his buddies to drive, and his other buddy can drive his other car. And then when his breaks, Joseph gets out of his and takes the other guy's, and then the other guy has to fix his car.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah, so like the guy that didn't have a lot of money maybe works on the cars and keeps them both going, and then Joseph has both of his cars and stuff. I'm getting sidetracked. Oh, yeah, so whatever you want out of Drift Week, say there's, on the last Drift Week, there was a whole group of Z guys that went. Brad and Kevin, Wen, and like our Texas guys. And they all took Zs. And there was 5 Zs that were exactly like each other, all HRZs. They could go out in a tandem. They didn't need something fast or anything because they had plenty of tandem friends that all had the exact same speed car. That's perfect.
Yeah.
You don't need anything faster if all your cars work together. It's just like if Fielding's there and I have my fast car and he has a slow car, he wants to drive with me and I want to drive with him because we're both like buddies and driving and stuff and with similar ability and all that stuff. So we have fun.
Yeah.
I don't know how much you drive and stuff, but you want to be with your buddies, So whatever your buddies drive, I would say that's what you want to drive. and then by like how good your back is or how young you are is how aggressive the car could be.
Luckily, that seems to be very natural because, like, whenever I got into drifting, the people that I was hanging around were driving 350Zs. So naturally, I got a 350Z, and you can kind of share parts and stuff. So I think that's more the organic way to just get into drifting, it seems.
Yeah, it's whatever your friends have and whatever your friends are doing, and like your budget and all these different things. I make these videos of like how to buy a drift car, and I'm like, are you a mechanic? Are you rich? Are you poor? And I'm like, these aren't insults
Break
if you
it all
can't
the way
work on
down.
a car, or if you're poor. Like we were all poor when we were 18 or 16. Don't go try and build an M4 if you're 16 years old. Go get the cheapest thing.
Buy a
possible.
Miata.
Yeah. So like we do all that stuff. So you do the same thing with Drift Week.
Right.
There's tons of dudes like Jordan Duarte from Drift HQ and stuff. They just go buy M3s, like F80 M3s. That's not a big stress to them financially. They know them. They can drive them. They do their thing. The only problem with like a heavy car like that is the nicer the car is, the heavier it is, the worse it is on tires. And then you need 500 wheel to move one of those things because they get so heavy. Don't really, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well,
feel like you do. If you drive a $40,000, $50,000 used car, like you feel like you might as well have 500 wheels.
That one dude I can't remember what Drift Week it was. I think it was Drift Week 3. But he had the LS 400, I think, the 4-seater car that was 2J, big turbo. The car weighed like 4,500 pounds or something.
Oh, the really stylish black one?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah. He was that's DeWill. The kid Will, I think his name's Will. He has beautiful cars. He just built a Mercedes 2-door. Yeah, he has sick stuff. He was just at Honda Musselman. We invited him out to hang out and drive with us, but he didn't do the whole trip.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That car was cool. I'm glad you did kind of like his own little spotlight on that.
That car was
dude,
wild.
I loved that thing.
We had 4 people in it. It felt like that car was so heavy. He just clutch kicked it, and it felt like the car was physically ripping itself apart every second on track. Because it was so heavy with such heavy wheels and everything and like so much power.
Got 4 200-pound dudes in there.
They just tore tires to pieces. Thing was cool though. But then you're inside of it and you're like, this is not like any drift car I've ever been in. You're like, it's just like, I mean, 20 clutch kicks a lap. But I mean, that's
legs killing you.
That's 4 people in a 4,000-pound car or something. Like that's wild.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's how much it actually weighs.
But I think it was around 4,500 in the video that you did.
Well, then it must be 5,000 pounds with 4 American males in it.
More than that.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Then what was in your opinion, what was the most unique car you've ever seen come on Drift Week?
There's so many interesting cars on Drift Week. Dustin's truck with the Corvette chassis underneath it. That was really unique. It drove a lot like a Corvette, which is weird. Man, I'm going to forget so many cool cars.
I'm sure it's hard to remember them all.
We've had a Corolla with a little Honda motor in it. We've had a lot of Zs just because they work so well. The F80 M3 blew my mind the first time we had one of those on the trip. There was Chris Finch's Corvette is wild. It makes like 650 wheel on pump gas or something. It doesn't even look like a normal drift car. It makes so much power. And like the guys with money just like run our compound tires and stuff. And like, it's hilarious. Kevin and Brittany, they had a supercharged. They're my Light Bright friends. They had a supercharged Corvette on one trip and then a Z06 on another trip. And both of those cars made so much power, it's comical. Like, you didn't even know it. I was drifting at Cam's Acres and drifted the whole track, and I was like, I'm in first? Yeah, I was like, what? And then I went to second, and like, you can even tell what gear you're in because the car made so much power. It didn't matter.
Nuts.
You just drove it and just got on and off the gas, no clutch kicking, anything. Dumb, easy to drive.
I'm sure it's really hard to choose.
I think on Drift Week 1 was really interesting because like Chelsea had his little S54 E36 Ti. Matt Field had that Corvette. Adam had the JZX with like a stock turbo. We had so many different kinds of cars.
That's still one of my
everybody
favorite cars.
just drove stuff. Yeah, Fielding's car is really good on Drift Week. And fairly unique for what it is, even though it's just a 2J S14. When you're in it, you're like, damn, this thing works.
Yeah.
Same thing with my V8 car. Like, it's so boring. My Red's kooky that's out there, like, dismantled. And then people will get in it, and I even let people drive it, and they're like, this is the easiest car I've ever driven. And you're like, yeah, it's sick. And, like, people are like, it's almost boring. You're like, not when you're, like, in the wet at Pocono on snow and you're tandeming 8 cars deep. Like, you just want the thing to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of cars that I thought I might like I think I drove a CTSV on Drift Week.
Mhm.
Somebody did one. I think Drift Week 3.
I remember seeing Taylor Holes when he first brought that out because
Yeah.
he's not too far from us.
Yeah.
So
I'm like, I
he
don't
brought it
really-
out to the National Super Speedway, which is a big 100
Yeah.
mile per hour entry track. So that was cool to see, but it just didn't seem very practical.
Yeah, I don't like the really heavy cars. I like the lighter stuff.
Yeah.
The F80 M3s are sick, but I don't think I'd necessarily want one because I would just suffer and be in a lighter car and maybe like be more careful about
Mm-hmm.
putting a really comfortable seat in it. Like Fielding put a like reclinable Bride in his.
Yeah.
He's like, it was a game changer.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, I
Save
did.
your
I was
spine.
driving my E36 full interior LS3 car around for the Chelsea event. We built that for Chelsea, and I drove it from here to Houston, which is like 5 hours or whatever. Drove it around Houston, drove it to the event. He drove it at the event, and then drove it home. It was like effortless. Drove amazing, no problems, and we caged it like idiots. But I would, if that was caged, full interior, I would love to drive that on Drift Week. Best Drift Week car, probably.
Damn.
Full interior E36 with an LS3.
It's crazy how popular the BMW chassis are now, and they just work.
Yeah.
But
And it's more of a luxury car, even though they're not super nice anymore by today's standards
Yeah.
than like a 240SX is. It's hard to make a 240SX livable in the street. I mean, like, as a 44-year-old guy, like, when I was a kid, I used to drive that shit, but, like, I don't really want to drive an S chassis anymore in the street.
yeah, no, I'm 25 and I drive a truck every day. I have no care in the world to drive a low car anymore on the street.
I've
I
had
just
at
miss
least-
shifting gears sometimes.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've
Yeah.
had at least 50 S chassis, and I don't need street ones.
Yeah. Well, actually, speaking of cool cars, have you seen Jonathan Cash's new XLR that he's building?
What's an
This
XLR?
is like way off topic, or isn't it called an XLR? The Cadillac, basically the C5 Cadillac with the. I think it's XLR.
That seems really weird to do to yourself.
Actually, I'll show you. When I had him on,
I know what an XLR is now that you tell me, yeah.
Yeah, well, okay, well he's doing a whole like
I've drifted
custom
one of those
wide
before, which is really
body.
interesting.
Oh, I'm sure, but
I was going to say it's interesting because you're starting off with a heavy car, but I guess it doesn't really matter if you're like, I think they have retracting hardtops.
yeah.
So if you get rid of all that stuff, cool.
So he's doing like full custom wide body.
It's like
and everything
Daigo's
on it.
SC430. I think a lot of people just build different stuff so that they have an identity, and that's cool.
Yeah. No, I wanted to bring it up just to see your opinion on that type of chassis because since they do resemble
Just a
Corvettes
Corvette
so
with a different
much,
body.
and you're like very big on Corvettes, obviously. Not this. I
Yeah,
don't
none
know why I
of these
pointed
Corvettes
at
are
that, but oh, you had. That's right. You had won the red Corvette from
I
the
had
LZ.
Corvettes way before then,
and then,
too.
yeah.
I've had
okay.
like 5 or 6.
Big LS guy though,
Yeah.
and those have the North Star.
Yeah, I think it's always silly thinking about like, do I like somebody else's Cadillac or something like that?
Right.
Because the person's building it for himself and he has reasons and all that other stuff. And I wouldn't build one personally for various reasons. So I wouldn't personally be interested, but I think it's cool.
Yeah, I just meant for like the drivability of them. Like I've never personally even driven one on the
I've
street.
drifted one before. It's
so,
like a really heavy Corvette.
Okay, so
With
it's
a
not.
foot brake on, or like e-brake on the foot. So you hold the handle, if I remember correctly, and just kick it.
Oh wow.
I was drifting one, so that's how I was drifting.
So it's not very practical if you wanted to just go build a pretty stock form one,
Well,
right?
it only came automatic, if I'm correct.
Oh,
The
okay.
e-brake is on the ground. I think they have hard folding hard tops, which push them over. I don't think anybody really makes a hard folding hard top car that's like a luxury car underneath 4,000 pounds. Like SL Mercedes
true.
and
Double
those, by the
frames.
time you put all the sound deadening, make a big car with the V8 drivetrain and stuff, they're probably 4,200 pounds.
Jesus.
They're cool, but I mean, I don't
Yeah.
want one.
Yeah, that was a side tangent, anyways.
I
But
kind of thought they had North Star motors as well. I think they're like a 32 valve North Star motor or something. I don't think they're LSs.
yeah, they're not LS.
Obviously,
They have the
it's-
North Star. So that was one of the
Yeah,
points
those are
why I was
garbage can
asking.
motors.
Yeah.
Those are awful.
Jump. Okay, well, yeah, that was a side tangent thing. I want to get back on Drift Week, but do you ever see Drift Week kind of becoming this big animal of like people desiring to do that as their sponsorship push and kind of using Drift Week and events related to it as their career base instead of FD? Or has that ever even crossed your mind?
I don't think someone could make a living doing Drift Week.
Not not
There's definitely
specifically
people
just Drift Week, but
I know of many people that brought in more than $10,000 in sponsorship off one sponsor to do Drift Week. I know of one person that probably brought in 50 grand to do Drift Week. I don't want to say who they are.
Yeah, no.
But it's very common for people to bring in sponsorship money off Drift Week in various ways to do Drift Week. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, I was just curious because
I don't want to say who
like
it is or whatever.
Yeah, and it's your company too, so I don't expect you to like hype it up and
Since
stuff like
Drift
that.
Week
But
1, there's been people pulling in big sponsorships.
that's gotta feel good to you, though, right? Since you started all of this basically yourself, because everyone kind of threw everything on you, right?
Feel cooler if I got the check.
Ah, there you go.
No, I mean, like, those people, it wasn't Drift Week necessarily. It was them creating a media package around it and then having something to sell. So if one of those drivers can vlog and have something to do with it and can sell that package as a Drift Week thing, they could do it. And a lot of those guys, and I don't want to speak necessarily for someone, but I'll just say someone's name. I'll say for instance, Matt Field. He'll have a sponsorship proposal with racing stuff, and then he can do extra stuff with those same sponsors or other ones for lifestyle events. So maybe he does some grid life stuff or Drift Week or whatever. It comes out of a different budget sometimes for lifestyle stuff than drifting. Oh. So if he were to do something like that, he could bring in X amount of dollars, and those guys don't do anything cheap. I would think the lowest tier would be like 10 grand or something on something like that for a sponsor to do something. Huh. It's a separate car and all that stuff. Yeah. He prepares it and like he makes the media and everything. That makes sense. So I would think that some of those drivers have to bring in 20 to 30 grand to do a Drift Week because they're not going to spend their own money. The highest level guys. Yeah. I'm guessing at minimum. So yeah, there are people since Drift Week 1 that made money doing Drift Week. Or spent it all and had fun and had a vacation on someone else's dime doing the media.
Right. Okay, well then a lot of the guys that are kind of making the career out of it doing vlog stuff, what is your perspective on that? Because you used to do content, you haven't posted in a while. But do you think it's a good thing for drifting and the sport for so many people to utilize content to push?
If YouTube driving was not making vloggers and all this stuff, drifting would be dead by now.
Amen to that.
Drifting was going downhill probably in like, I don't remember time frame anymore because I'm so old, but drifting spiked up and got popular-ish in 2003, 2004 and started working its way up. People were excited. People were hyped. Formula D popped up. It started working its way up. And then probably around like the economy dying in 2008 or something like that really put a big damper on it. People didn't have as much disposable income. The magazines were all dying. Yeah. Option videos and like best motoring videos were no longer being translated. YouTube had not taken off yet in the capacity of what we remember it. There wasn't any great way to get your content fixed. So there wasn't a lot of excitement from magazines, from FD was no longer on real television. Like it was on G4 Tech TV. That's the only place I've ever seen it on TV.
Yeah, I have personally never watched it on TV.
So I don't think there was anywhere to really watch Formula D back then that I can think of. It was on like some weird CBS Sports 2 or something like that. So I don't know. I'm
the secondhand channel of some network
it was ESPN Ocho. You're too young for that joke. That was like
I've heard that though before. My dad
But my point is there wasn't a good way to watch drifting because the internet streaming stuff hadn't necessarily taken off with usable like resolutions and everything. Right. So it was a weird time for content. And then probably somewhere around 2000, when did vlogging really take off? 2014 or something, media really started to become a thing.
That sounds about right, yeah.
So before that, it was a bit of a dead zone. And to also say that, we had Nopi Drift and Formula D competing up until like 2008. And then D1 USA, that's a really long story, but it started before Formula D and then got knocked down for a while. Came back from the same people that were doing XDC or something. And they did or maybe XDC was from the same people that did D1 USA. Anyways, long story short, D1 USA was 2009. They did the full season because I did that. And then there was no competitor to Formula D. And like there was nothing on TV anymore. And like Speed Channel used to have Nopi Drift on it, which got a lot of people watching it. But obviously TV dropped off. And there was just like, it was kind of a dead zone. Me hosting events, the events got much smaller, I think, from 2008 to 2014. And then right at 2014 is when I started to take events really seriously. When I was making a lot of content, they were building back up. We were getting a lot more drivers and things were taking off.
Right.
And then stuff has been taking off big time since then. So to your original question, YouTube gave drifting a huge revival, just like option videos and all that stuff got them taken off and shoot up.
Yeah.
Oh, and also there was a big transition from forums. Everybody was like posting to forums.
That
You're
was
probably
big,
too young
yeah.
for.
Well, I
and
was
all
on
the
forums a little bit.
all the forums died probably somewhere around 2010 when Facebook came online. So there was no longer the same sense of car communities, and Facebook did not really have the car community because they didn't have like all
it was
this
in groups and stuff like that.
Yeah, all that stuff
too.
hadn't taken off quite yet.
Yeah.
So
Marketplace.
So there was a weird thing, and drifting was dying because I was an event host and I saw it. And then around 2014, it probably, depending on the where you are in the nation too, it started to take off. And also, I must say, around 2008 to whenever, you would consistently see all drifting organizations take a little hype thing of like, they'd get started, they'd go a year or two, in their third year, the owner would realize they're making no money and they're spending too much time, and maybe they have a kid or like their job needs more attention, they're not making money, so they'd quit. So there's a natural ebb and flow to drift events. Just like you saw clutch kickers pop up and then die off. They get really excited and then it's very hard to make money, so then they die off. And
I've actually mentioned that before because I noticed long time ago when clutch kickers first started, you were doing an interview with someone and you had said that clutch kickers seems like someone that had a lot of inheritance and just wanted to do something good for drifting. And I think
I probably didn't say inheritance. I knew the story of clutch kickers way before it happened. It's someone that has money, they have disposable income, they love their kids.
That's what it was.
They're excited about it. I just got to get that straight. Because I know Michael Castleberry.
Apologies.
Yeah, no, I didn't want to say inheritance. No, they just have a loving family that's super into it, a dad with disposable income and a lot of money and stuff. They were really excited. I think that, I don't know the personal story of it all falling apart, but I do know that they moved from one track to another to try and control it, and they didn't want to keep putting all their money into Emerald Coast because they were building out infrastructure there and didn't have control of it. And then like, they went to Freedom Factory. I don't know exactly what happened there, but I assume that they didn't have complete control over it. And then eventually, like, not making money for 3 years, putting so much of your heart and soul and everything into the drifting, somebody probably gets disinterested within the family, and then it starts to fall apart. Because it's hard to stay interested in something for so many years as a host.
I loved clutch kickers so much. I got to drive one fun day event there at Emerald Coast. Thank God, I loved that track so much.
I was going to say, though, but when you're the host, you're creating, Michael Castleberry and his family was creating this incredible, I hope I'm getting all the names right, they're getting
that's right, yeah.
Yeah, they're providing this incredible experience that people are getting so excited. They're building entire cars for, just like Formula D. Formula D gets people so excited they build entire cars and shape their whole life around this thing, come from around the country, around the world. And as the event host, sometimes if you're not making money and you're bleeding to make everyone else have a good time, there comes a point in time where you have to decide to quit because your own life is probably, like, the quality of life is going down for some reason. I don't know the full story or anything, but I'm just guessing. But anyways, yeah. So I was going to say that's what happens to all these different event series, and they were all tanking and dying from 2008 to 2014.
Do you think if they would have started clutch kickers off at, let's say, a $50,000 series
I don't
and
know
worked their
anything
way
about
up?
the backwards of...
No.
I think Clutch Kickers was just spending so much money trying to grow so fast. I think that if they were located somewhere else in the country, they probably would have done better. They were landlocked way down in, I don't know if landlocked is the correct word. They were Florida locked way down away from everything. So guys like Brandon Wicknick that wanted to do it, it's like a 60-hour trip or something to get down there from Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
And if you've been in his truck, That'd be a brutal 60 hours in Brandon Wicknick's truck.
That's very true.
So anyways, I was going to say, I think that was the problem. I think they would have done better somewhere else in the country. But that's where they live, and that's where they wanted to do their stuff.
Yeah. Do you ever see it coming back, you think?
I don't think there's a business model that works for that.
I think a lot of the big payout series are kind of dying.
I don't think the big payout series, I've done big payouts before, and I don't think, like I gave away a JZX90 with a big turbo on the side and all this stuff and cash and stuff. Never breaks even. I think that people realize that the real money is made at like Adam LZ World Tour events.
Yeah.
Or things where you can pack massive amounts of people in there, where you have crazy advertising. The problem with the big payout models, and I can use Clutch Kicker as an example, or like someone else, I don't know who else, Riverside, is the people come from around the country because of the big payout. You can't ever stop the big payout, which is a big problem. So if you want all those crazy cars, you have to pay. And if you just had an event that didn't have it, you'd immediately lose 90% of your people. The people that were still located in Florida would come out and drive and hang out, but you'd lose all the big heavy hitters, and you would immediately, your series would die in like, or your event, whatever, would die immediately. Yeah. And you never get to have those events without the payout to make the money to afford to do something else. I used to host these events at like Gulf Greyhound Park, which was a parking lot event, and it would pay for our road course events.
Okay.
So we would take money and steal it from one event to go pay out a bigger event that we wanted to do, but wouldn't necessarily make money. And that's how those big payout events were. When I did it, I'd give $5,000 in a day. I might have done 10,000 once. I did a JZX. Every year I give a trip away to the winners of each of my series to Japan and all this stuff. None of this stuff is ever financially viable. So you're always stealing money from something else to get people excited, to give back to your drivers, to do all this stuff. And Clutch Kickers was killing it on that front. But I suspect, and I don't know from personal, whatever, I wasn't there writing checks or anything, I would expect that they didn't make money, or they never made much money, or like, overall it wasn't worthwhile financially to put insane amounts of money like that in it.
Right.
So it probably wasn't a viable business like that. And eventually someone's like, let's go do something else.
Yeah, I don't blame them.
Because you're a slave to your job. You literally created yourself a second job.
Oh, yeah. A second headache.
Yeah.
Not just a job. Hell.
So those people doing that stuff are like saints.
Oh, yeah.
They created
great for
so
the
much
industry,
excitement
by all
for
means.
everybody. I think it's rad. And again, I don't know the full story. I'm just speculating.
Yeah. I can
Opinions
you
are
can
like
see that
assholes.
going to any of those big payout events. Like, I mean, I brought up Riverside is because I do someone's media that I have to go to almost every single Riverside. So I see it. And every time I show up to one last year that was a $50,000 payout, like,
You can
look
count
up
the
in the
drivers
crowd
and
and
count
there's
the
nothing
spectators.
there.
Yeah. You're like, there's 100 people watching at $20 a head. That's $2,000.
Yeah, it's simple math.
And then you're
It's
like,
there's no way.
And there's 80 drivers at $400 or whatever, which is, I don't know, $20,000. I don't know. But you're just like, they brought in $22,000. I'm missing something. You're like, this is without renting the track or paying insurance or paying the people working or the judges or like anything.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't know what's going on.
Which luckily, big sponsors and stuff backed it. So that helped. And he's actually going to backpedal now.
Yeah. But I was going to say, if you could create something like, I just use the LZ World Tour right now because it's kind of on fire. You've got that, and they spend the money hosting the event. They bring in huge spectators, and the spectators are what makes everyone excited to drive, and they don't have to give away the money.
Yeah.
The same thing with Formula D. They don't have to give away big cash prizes because they bring enough spectators that those drivers then, can all sell their sponsorship proposals and bring in money. So like say Formula D had $50,000 for first place. Drifters are retarded financially when you do numbers, so I sometimes like baby the sound. But Formula D, I mean, obviously we do burnouts on tires. They're expensive. But Formula D, if they gave away $50,000 for first place, everybody's always like, why doesn't Formula D give away money? Well, say Von Ginn Jr. won every event of the year and won $50,000 every round. That would not come close to paying the budget for RTR, even if he won every round. But by them supplying 10,000 spectators, he can sell off to sponsors and get $1 million for his program. I would imagine his program with Chelsea and stuff is $2 million or something.
I don't even want to know.
I'm guessing it's $2 million. I have no freaking clue. But they do all this outside activation stuff too. They're doing stuff every weekend. But let's say it's $2 million. They can run multiple cars, and then there can be 5 or 10 other teams running at $300,000 or $500,000 a season that they bring in from sponsors, and they can base a series off that. Those big teams don't give a rat's ass about the payout.
Yeah.
Even if the payout was large, because one, they're not going to win it every round, so they can't depend on it to run a business. Correct. And two, even if they won every round, it's chicken shit compared to like their big sponsor money and everything else. It's a nice bonus, of course, to win money. Cool to get a big check.
But that's all it
do
should
all
be.
That stuff.
Let it be your extras.
$300 check up there? Oh yeah.
Hey.
Obviously, like with a $300 check on the wall, I spent more in tires to get that, you know. But I did win a bunch of events.
Spent more in gas just to get there, probably.
I won $5,000 at a bunch of events doing Nopi and other events, and I'd win $5,000, and even at $5,000, you're like, I think that paid for my weekend, you know?
Because
of tires, because those events were like in St. Louis and different places, you know, so you're traveling.
Yeah.
And then you're obviously not always winning. So even winning $5,000 a weekend, I was losing money doing some of these series.
Right. And especially, like, dude, just going to an event, I don't know how many times, like, I don't check my bank account because I just don't want to know how much I'm spending, which is a bad, don't follow that. Do, what is it? Do as I say, not as I do, or whatever.
Do as I do, not as I say.
Yeah.
But going back to the FD thing, they have a model where they bring in spectators and then everybody can base their sponsorship proposals off that and make their money. And they should not be giving away prize money because prize money doesn't benefit everybody like that kind of thing. Whereas I don't think Clutch Kickers ever got to the 10,000 spectator thing. I think they were in a few hundred. Mm-hmm. So they never transitioned over into that other thing.
Right.
Which is what they eventually had to do.
I think it keeps the camaraderie of it, too, because then the drivers going through the competition aren't dead set focused on what's at the end, where the prize pot is. Because, like, Nate Hamilton, when I did his first podcast, I just had him on again, but he was talking about the first LZ World Tour that he won, and he literally thought all he won was a skate deck.
I forgot about that.
Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah, I won a Corvette. There we go.
Which that one, like, it was actually announced, and then... Which it may have been announced, but Nate didn't know it. He literally just thought he won a skate deck. Like, that was it. He was cheering about that. And then after everything settled, no, he won a trip to one of the rounds to Ireland.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, dude, no fucking way.
Yeah.
But he was like, that's the beauty of it, though, is because you don't, like, that's not advertised. So everyone's purely there just to enjoy
all
the driving.
All the other ones were advertised, the prizes.
Yeah. But I seriously don't remember him advertising that for the Ireland one. Or for the...
I don't think
Jersey.
he knew in the pits. I think that's the one Colette roasted me on.
Oh, yeah.
I did not expect her car to be that fast. I was just like, whoa, she's gone.
Oh, yeah.
And that's like a 30-mile-an-hour entry, and she roasted me on a 30-mile-an-hour entry.
I felt bad for her whenever I was at the Riverside 50K this year in Jersey. Mm-hmm. Dude, that second outer zone sucked her up so many times.
Did she crash her car?
Like 4 times that event.
No.
I felt terrible. The vet.
Oh.
Yeah.
She's doing fine. Don't feel bad for Colette. She's killing it.
Oh, well, yeah, no, I know. But just that day, like, it seemed like almost every lap she went out, like, she just kept getting sucked into these walls. I'm like, damn, dude. Yeah. Can't even have fun.
She's a good driver, though. I wouldn't worry about her.
Oh, she's nuts.
I have to say she's a good driver because she beat me. So if I said she was bad,
that'd
be real bad on me. No, she's really good now.
She's
very
out there
driving with everybody in Japan. Doing. She's all around the world now with everybody. It's so cool.
Yeah. I like that she doesn't piggyback off of Adam either. You can tell in her content and stuff, she like genuinely tries to separate herself, and which I don't watch a ton of your content, sorry, but she stays away from Adam.
Why would you apologize for watching your content?
I feel like I have to. I don't know.
You can watch some of the content.
But
I'm old. I'm a dad, so I don't watch anybody's content.
I hardly do anymore. The only reason I'm
trying to finish
now,
One Piece still. Yeah. I'm like 700 episodes into One Piece. Sorry, keep going. I was holding a baby for years. So, like, there's nothing to do with an infant at 3 a.m.
I don't have that experience yet. Thank God.
No,
I don't
babies
need a
are
kid
great
right now.
They just change your life.
That's what everyone tells me. But I'm like, dude, I feel like I can barely take care of myself right now. So it's probably a bad idea for me.
No, things just change. You do less stuff for free. You have to get serious. Like, you can't help your friends out so much for free all the time because, like, you have mortgage payments and you got to pay baby stuff and stuff. So mostly you cut out a lot of the, like, the fun stuff that you can learn at when you're young. Mm-hmm. And as you get older, you don't need so many learning experiences, I guess. I mean, you do, but you don't take them. And then you have to go make money instead a lot of that time. Like somebody offered me a trip to Dubai last week or this week for a week, all paid expense, and I'd get paid and stuff. And I'm like, knocking me out for a week? I have to make
Damn, you
a lot,
have to think about that now.
to pay for my family and do all that stuff. And you're like, free trip doesn't do me any good anymore. Where I did go to Dubai for a couple weeks or something in the past and had an amazing time, and I'd love to go again, especially for free. But I'm just like, I can't do it right now. You know, like, So I was gonna say I have to turn down opportunities all the time because once you get older and you have bills and stuff and wife and all these things, you can't do all the fun stuff.
Of course. Yeah.
Which is sad.
Yeah, good balance though, the way you got it. So,
for example, when I won that Corvette, everybody's like, "What'd you do with the thing?" I was like, "I sold it." They're like, "What'd you do with the money?" I was like, "I paid for the baby surgery that happened the day before I left directly after my daughter got out of recovery and stuff.
Yeah.
Flew to the event, got there that night, drove that day, and I was sick, like vomiting and grit and stuff. And Chelsea almost pulled me out of the car, but luckily I won somehow. I don't know how. And then I sold the car and I paid for her surgery.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I was going to say, like, that's being a dad. You're not getting to do all the fun stuff. You're like, I can't save this car. But you're like, now I don't have to worry about the bill, you know?
Yeah, but it's probably all worth it, I would assume. You got
a
mini you, dude. Like,
she could have an OnlyFans account when I don't know what the kids will have back then. But I was going to say, I could hate her or something when she gets older.
Shit.
No, hopefully I'm a good dad and she doesn't end up as a stripper.
Oh, dude, that's hilarious.
She's good for a 2-year-old, though.
Yeah. I've actually been bringing that up, the whole kid thing, recently, ever since I had Luke on, because he has a good dynamic with his family, it seems, of the whole, because, like, dude, they travel. Mm-hmm. That's all they do is travel. And just, he sleeps in the truck all the time, like, but somehow, like, the kids just don't even know a difference. Like, they would prefer to be doing it.
Kids are very resilient and adapt to anything. They live in war zones. They, like... You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy what kids put up with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. All right. Well, we won't ramble on down that.
All right, keep going.
We'll jump on to the subscriber questions because we're already at like an hour and 40.
Doesn't matter.
I didn't want to take up too much of y'all's time, but I kind of did anyway.
It's like midnight right now, so it doesn't matter what we're doing.
Right.
I made him, by the way, he wanted to do this podcast, and I was like, I can give you time, but it has to start at 9:45 p.m. because my daughter's bedtime is whatever. And like, I should have her in bed and asleep by like 9:15, and then I can drive over here. So
which is perfect for me.
Everything revolves around that.
Yeah. That's very ironic, actually, since we were just talking about that, the whole kid life balance.
That's my life now, is balancing kids and everything else.
Yeah, which it worked out better for me, too.
Like
I'm used to staying up this late.
Piece of shit, like doing drift week for, however long. To do a drift week, I have all this planning. I have at least a week or two of like pre-driving because I go to every track in advance, go to every restaurant, find every like extracurricular activity. So like at least 2 weeks away from home, sometimes another week to go out to see it. 2 weeks of actually drift week, a day or two of traveling to get there and like breaking down and everything. So to do a drift week is at least Mark, do you think 5 to 6 weeks for a drift week for me away from home, away from the kid?
Yeah. Dude, that's nuts.
Yeah. Sorry, Mark is walking by. Yeah, so 5 to 6 weeks of not being at home to host a single drift week. So I was going to say I feel terrible. Man. Like, that's why I overcompensate and like I'm at home for 5 or 6 hours. Yeah. And then like I'm going to Japan for 2 weeks, so I won't see my kid for 2 weeks. And I don't want to drag her around yet because she's small and like it's easier just to be at home.
Yeah, that's fair.
And
you said how old is she?
2.5.
Oh, yeah, she's really small.
Yeah. She likes her little routine. She likes her bike at home. She likes her toys. If I had her out in Japan, like she'd not want to eat sushi. And like,
this place?
Yeah.
Why is everything different?
And she won't appreciate it yet. In a few years, I think she'll have fun and appreciate it.
I still haven't even gone out of the country
and the cost of traveling with the whole family. Like imagine, like right now, flights to Japan are $1,600 to like $2,200. So if you're taking Luke has 4 people in his family. That's $8,000 every time you step onto a plane. And I think Australia is way more right now. So it could be $10,000 plus every, like if he goes back and forth, that's $20,000 to get from the States and then come back home. Wait, no. You just have a return trip. $10,000.
Damn.
Forget planes go back and forth.
Yeah, round trip stuff. Yeah.
But $10,000.
Wow, man.
I just paid for everybody, all my crew of the people. I take Cy to Japan, myself, and then the 2 winners of Lone Star Drift and Texas Street Legal. and our tickets were about $1,600 a piece. So whatever that is, 7,000 or something, just in plane tickets. That's without rental cars or all the other stuff.
Nuts. Austin Camula. We'll just send it. What was the inspiration for Drift Week, and what are your favorite memories from the first one?
Real quickly, we already talked about how we started Drift Week. The one thing I'll say the inspiration is adventures. We have the ability, being YouTubers. I'm not really a YouTuber, but I'm around them and I YouTube. We have the ability to like tell a story and to do crazy stuff. And this is what I was saying to Trevor and Adam and everybody that night. I'm like, we can do anything we dream up. All we have to do is fucking do it. If we want to go do an adventure where we go drive for 2 weeks straight with all of us and we hold each other's hands and kumbaya and go from track to track, all we have to do is beg for track time, figure it out, pick the places, make it happen. Our imaginations are the only thing limiting us. Adam runs a channel where he just buys cars and like repeats and rents and has that crazy compound. He could do anything he imagined. He doesn't have to own all that property and all that house and everything, or like, all the cars. That's what he chose to do. He could have been an adventure vlogger. He could have just like lived out of hotels anywhere in the world, probably for free, and traveled. He could do whatever he wants. Some of my friends like have OnlyFans accounts, so they take their YouTube fame and then go do that and make crazy money. Some of my friends like Trevor just have a build channel. Some of my friends, I guess I can say they have OnlyFans because they run the damn thing. The Light Bright channel.
We're past 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
That's what they do anyways. So they promote it. So my friends, a Light Bright channel, Brittany and Kevin, they just travel around the world constantly. They were in Thailand for like a month. They're trying to get rid of all their worldly possessions besides their off-road vehicles in their channel and just travel non-stop, which is so cool. Go everywhere in the world, do all the crazy stuff, experience everything in the world.
You almost get like your imagination from being a kid.
So as a YouTuber, all you have to do is imagine and get to scale and then just keep pushing it and make the money. And I don't make my money from YouTubing. I lose money on YouTubing.
Right.
You understand how that works.
Oh, yeah.
Just the cost of it. You don't make enough. I'm not at big scale. I don't post enough. I don't do all this stuff. But I was going to say, all we have to do is do that. And so we did, and we came up with idea, and we dreamed, and we now just rinse, repeat. And like, I want to do, after the first one, kind of probably during the first one, I was like, I want to do every track in the United States that I want to. And like, how do I make that happen? It was never going to happen doing one track a week or weekend. I had to slam these things in. And I was like, if I'm doing this and like my friends are doing it, might as well just invite more people. Because originally there's 14 of us and we're all close friends. And then I was like, well, this is kind of a waste. We could just do this with 20-something people. And then once I got good enough at hosting with 20-something people, I was like, let's go to 45.
Because we keep pushing the envelope.
Well, because we had the budget to do crazier stuff then. But then the budget made its own problems of now we need $200,000 of tires. Now we need, all this crazy crap. Now we need containers that cost $24,000 a pop to ship. Luckily, prices are back down, but I think they're still $6,000 or $8,000. They haven't fully recovered
still
down.
Absurd, but
no, but I mean, it's just the cost of doing business, and it gets built into the tire pricing, and everybody eats it. But it's scary, if you know what I mean. Because if you pay $48,000 per container, or no, that was for two. It was $24,000 per container. If you paid that, and then container prices dropped after the next week, you no longer are competitive pricing, and you're going to eat it on every one of those tires. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Because suddenly your cost on a tire is $150, and somebody else is selling it for $90. So you get boned.
Oh yeah, that blows,
yeah. So I was going to say it's terrifying. Okay. So that's how Drift Week came about. I just wanted to do crazy adventures and all that stuff, and do all these crazy tracks and just dream. And I want to go dream more dreams and come up with stuff, but I haven't come up with stuff because I'm so busy nowadays.
Oh yeah.
So I want to kill Drift Week, by the way, and come up with something better. Just like I wanted to kill Lone Star Drift had an end date of 2014. I didn't want to host it after that.
Damn, well, I got to drive a Drift Week before you kill it.
Yeah, but I was sitting around in 2014 and like, man, I have not done what I wanted to do. I was like, all right, let's erase and like start over and do harder. And then we did it. So Lone Star Drift has like been rebooted a few times and worked a lot harder. Originally it was like 10 dudes driving, and like I didn't want anybody there. Yeah. Because more people were just a
Keep
problem.
it a private day.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's fair.
And then we just kept building it out and building it out and building it out and changing it and changing it. And like nowadays it's more paid ride-along events where like we do Fuel Fest events, and it's $100 per lap for the spectators to get in the cars. The drivers collect 100% of that. Some of the drivers are getting almost $5,000 in one day. They keep all of it. And like, that's the thank you for all these drivers driving so long. If you're a Lone Star Drift driver that's been driving our
Actually,
events,
I want
you
to
get a
touch
spot.
on that because every event host that I've talked to says it doesn't make sense, budget-wise, insurance-wise, whatever their circumstances, to do payouts to the drivers for ride-alongs. How, like,
I don't.
how
pay
does that
out.
make
the
sense?
drivers give it directly to the people.
Okay. Or the people give it to the drivers directly?
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
There's a bunch of
but
events around
I've
the country
mentioned,
that do
like,
that.
I don't understand why y'all just must be greedy or something. I don't know what it is because they always every event
the
host has
reason
come up
why
with
it's
an
not worth
excuse.
a lot of the time is if the spectators pay $0 to $10 a lap, the driver loses money putting someone in a car. If it's $10 to $20 in a lap, starting to get close to breaking even. Once it goes over $20 a lap, there's starting to be like a profit in there for the driver. So if the event is not large enough and you don't have the scale of thousands of people at a non-normal, like non-endemic, so like it can't be a Lone Star Drift event. It has to be Fuel Faster. It has to be something bigger.
Yeah.
Has to be something with a lot of people at it. Formula D does ride-alongs
Just to
in the
cover
pits
the other
at Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
There's lots of events that do ride-alongs. Clean Culture does them. Global Time Attack and stuff does them. You just need a critical mass of people so that you're not asking my mom to pay to get into like somebody's car at the local event.
Right.
That makes sense?
Right.
It cannot be the friends or the family of the drivers at the events because they're going to get free laps. It needs to be people that are not. And then, yes, you do need a lot of insurance to do that. And yes, you do need a lot of people. You do need the venue to support it. You need all these different things. You need different measures of safety. You need to be very careful on your rules because you're obviously doing way more liability. You don't want to have a track that someone can crash at necessarily and hurt anyone. There's a lot of other things that you're doing that you're being a little bit more critical of. And like say Mid Pond, that's a track that's probably not too far from you. You can't do ride-alongs at Mid Pond because A, there's not enough parking.
Yeah.
B, it would be hard to load the people in and do all this stuff. Like it wouldn't work there. It wouldn't work at a lot of places.
Right. That's just always been a big hot topic around my area, especially because there's literally no event hosts around that do that. It's just we see it all online through you, and everyone gets jealous, and they're like, "Well, I want to get paid for doing the ride-alongs, or put a fucking tip bucket in your car, then." Because
but I mean, like these guys are seriously working at these events.
Yeah.
They come out, they have a helper.
I'm
they have
glad
a sign,
you're explaining this.
they have like little payment instructions on their dash for collection and Venmo and PayPal and all this stuff, so that people can digitally give it to them.
No way.
They're checking. They have their tires all mounted up in rows and like a pit guy ready to do it, and they're in the car and they do 100 laps a day.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're bringing the extra stuff, the extra people to even fulfill
but it makes the
that.
driver feel like they can continue driving more than they normally would and get a lot of laps, and it's not killing them financially.
Right.
You're still not going to make crazy money or anything doing paid ride-alongs, but at least you're not losing as much money, and you get to drive more and all this stuff.
What is it like drifting a tube chassis car? Is it the future of pro drifting?
Tube chassis cars are not the future of pro drifting. The reason being is because NASCAR and all these series, they go so fast, they need crazy safety. They need to go 200 something miles an hour. They ended up in tube chassis for a lot of reasons to like limit the cars and do all this stuff and make them all equal. Drifting needs manufacturers that want to sell cars that look like cars. There's very few racing series in the world that I've seen that still have cars that also have spectators that want to see, like, that still have cars that look like cars and are cars, that are based upon cars. Like an FRS, a Formula D FRS is still a full unibody FRS with like the suspension pickup points and all that stuff that are similar. And then it has somewhat of a normal like 2JZ in it. It's not some crazy weird racing engine. It feels like something someone else could own and obtain and drive. It looks like it. It's really not that far off on it. A lot of Formula D cars are actually heavier than the normal cars.
Yeah.
Not the Mustangs and stuff, but yeah, some of the other cars are. So I think that drifting will not go tube frame. The reason I went tube frame is because these things are so hilariously cheap, light, and what I want is crazy tire wear. I want a bunch of different things, and I'm like eclectic at this point. I've been drifting for 20-something years. I want to experience everything. I was going to go buy a Formula Mazda, like open wheel race car. And I was like, I'll never be able to get to tandem in it. And I was going to go buy a Legends car a couple years ago, and one came up recently. I was going to buy it, and then Adam did it, and now I'm kind of disinterested. But yeah,
Beat me to it.
I have 2 of these. I have like a real NASCAR Cup car. This is actually cooler than the NASCAR Cup car because it's way lighter. I want an old IMSA car. But yeah, it's just a thing to experience. It drives way different than a normal car. It was asymmetrical. It's just different. I like it. I wanted to do it. I do not regret this at all. I only regret the machine shops we went through for the engine work recently. She's a good girl.
Yeah, we ain't going to talk about the engine work
G35
stuff.
versus
SN95?
SN95. SN95 and G35 are both perfectly fine drift cars. Both of them leave a lot to be desired. If you're going to have a G35, you're going to be stuck with a VQ. You might as well get the HR VQ, which means 2007 to 2008 350Z. Makes more sense because it's a lighter car. There's more parts availability, better offset of wheels and wheel sizes. First time you buy a G35 and you like go to bolt wheels on, you're like, fuck. You're like, this does not fit the wheels that I necessarily wanted to put on the car. Like a 350Z will soak up any wheel you put on it.
Oh, yeah.
You put a Wise Fab kit or something on a G35 and it's going to like stick out the wheel wells and like you got a wide body and stuff. You never have to wide body 350Zs really, or like 370s. So yeah, 350Zs and 370s are lighter. They have more common parts.
I've got
like
a full
that you can buy.
FDF, the FDF Mega Mantis kit on my front end. Usually sticks out 50 millimeters up top. I've got it to almost fit on factory fenders.
On a Z?
With the right wheel specs, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I would say, and then the SN95, they drive well, but they're heavy, and it's really hard to make any power out of those 4.6s to really drift. They make enough power and stuff, but I had one and it barely made 300 wheel with like long tubes, tune, all this crap. But it did drive well, and it was hard on tires because it was so heavy. I just think both the G35 and the SN95 probably are not the best starting points unless you just got them dumb cheap and just want to beat the cars up. Yeah. But
I like the G35 sedans just because I'm a sedan guy. But
yeah,
I wish I would have done the RB swap into something like that and left my Z alone because they're so good factory.
Yeah.
And I would have still had a seat time car and shit. And yeah, that was my mistake.
I also
anyways,
think the G35s are kind of ugly.
Really?
Yeah.
I love it. I don't know what it is. I'm just a four-door guy.
Yeah,
I love sedans. I don't know. Okay.
It's not as ugly as the 350Z swapped front end onto the G35 though.
Now, yeah,
Keep going.
that's horrible. That is terrible. I saw that. R32 Ryan, what is the next popular drift car? I assume in your opinion.
Oh man, I don't know what the next popular drift car is. I was talking to TJ Hunt and he's like, the new Supra, but I don't think there's going to be enough Supras out there. There's no new BMWs that are manual. I don't think that SMG or the DSG transmission swap is going to work in the new BMWs or the ZF automatic 8-speed like tune thing with the conversion piece and all that stuff.
Too new.
I don't think that's going to work. I talked to people that have them and they hate them and they don't want them. I don't know a single person that's happy with those setups unless they're selling them to you and stuff. So I don't think those are really realistically going to work for drifting. They might work really well for road racing or something.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's any newer BMW chassis really, except maybe like, the F80 and the G80 and stuff.
Right.
But those are not obtainable by most people, so it's not going to be a popular chassis. And they're very like Drift Week specific and stuff. Like nobody's going to take an F80 to a local thing unless it's their Drift Week car that they have, and then they take to a local thing.
Right.
Because it's heavy and all these different things and complicated.
What about the GR86?
GR86 is cool, but they're way too much money once you swap an engine in and do all that stuff. And there's not going to be enough of them. There was never enough FR86s. But I really like the way the GR86 looks. And maybe there'll be more pro car ones.
I'm glad they did that type of body style. I wasn't a big fan of the one previous.
Yeah, I don't think the GR86 is going to be super popular. I don't think the new Mustangs are going to be super popular. I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah. It's hard.
Maybe there'll be more tube
definitely
chassis
not, 'cause
just
they didn't
as
have
like
enough.
a comedy thing. The Zs, they'll just have to get cheap, but they're not common. There's like almost no Zs out.
Yeah.
They're not producing them. I don't know if those are going to hit the production numbers, just like the new Supers aren't going to hit the production numbers.
When we would see more videos on the channel?
I would love to make more content. I have, like I was telling him, like 40 videos already edited. I've been developing Drift Week 9 and just working really hard. And the first thing that goes is like the unpaid stuff, if you know what I mean, because I have a family and all this stuff. So the YouTube stuff doesn't really make me money. So it's the first thing on the chopping block when like I have my schedule and my time and I just don't get to it. I work until about 4 a.m. every night. And then I normally work till about 2. And then I wake up at like 9. And nowadays I've been going to bed at 4 and waking up at like 10 or 11. So like there's just no extra time to do it.
Right.
And I try not to kill myself. And I was hanging out with Alexi from Noriar and he's like, man, YouTube is a young single man's game. I was like, oh, what does that mean? He's like, when you have kids, you'll understand. This was like 4 years ago or 5 years ago. And then now that I have a kid, I'm like, oh, I get it. Like there's no daily vlogging and stuff. Or at least it would be really hard.
Absolutely.
So anyways, yeah, I focus on my events, my drivers, all this other stuff, all the real stuff. And then the YouTube is on the side. I do want to post more, but like my eyes were physically hurting and like my body hurt. I just like, I don't know if you ever deal with this stuff. I was just on a computer too much with my normal job. I was on my
I've hired an editor now,
so much.
but because of shit like that. Yeah.
I would love to hire an editor. If anybody knows an editor or a good shooter, I would love that.
That's actually what I do.
Yeah. I want somebody full-time though.
Like in-house?
Yeah, in-house.
Yeah, that's fair.
So otherwise it's more work than just me editing the thing.
Yeah. Oftentimes it does work well to have someone focus solely on the camera and then just sending off the footage for someone to schedule your content. I do have a cameraman. He just hates editing.
So anyways, and then I do most of everything. I do like 90% of the editing in our channel, and I do about 70% of the shooting myself. Okay. And then Sai does the rest of the shooting. He's way better at shooting than me. But anyways, yeah, so that's what I am doing. Maybe when my kid gets a little bit older or I get better at my job or I hire someone full-time to do it.
Yeah.
Keep going. What's next?
Oh, okay. All right. So, Man in the Mirror, what were you and Chelsea doing when drifting first took off in the States?
Like, how were we drifting? I was doing off-roading stuff, like I said earlier, and then I got into cars. I was autocrossing and road racing, shifter karting, and later on I got into endurance, like Lemon's car and all that stuff. And then I picked up drifting maybe like a year after a couple of those things, but I was off-roading way before that. And then I was like, autocrossing sucks. I was like, road racing is really fun, but you have to have a very specific, class-specific car to do all this stuff, and there wasn't a class-specific car that I necessarily wanted to race. So I did endurance racing with other teams just for fun and did HPE stuff. I did shifter kart stuff, but I got really hurt doing shifter kart. And I also had motorcycles.
That's sketchy.
I bought a bunch of different motorcycles and was like going to do racing. Anyways, I got really hurt and got air-lifed out and got seriously injured on a bike. So then I was like, this isn't fair to my mom and everything else. And like the people, my employees and everything. So I stopped riding bikes. And then I just continued with cars, like drifting. Drifting was the only thing that really held my attention super well. So I continued drifting and I got rid of most of everything else. I still will road race if like there's a team that wants me to do an endurance race and I don't have to have the car and all that stuff. But I don't do much road racing anymore. No shifter karting. We'll kart every once in a while, but not on like fast shifters. Just on like, road tax or whatever the non-shifty ones are. Yeah,
shifter karts are gnarly. Those are way too much. They seem sketchy.
Yeah, I had mine geared for like 102 or something. And it was gnarly.
Nope.
Yeah.
All right, so Elementality 77, one of the dudes from Night Ride. What does he think about Polish drift scene?
Man, congrats on all the Polish stuff and Night Ride. Poland was wild when I was there. I was with the Dorminati guys and Tomas when they were all back together and stuff. And I loved it. There was so much camaraderie with those guys. And then that track that we went to, the test place for the 18-wheelers, whatever that place was called, is the coolest drift track in like the world. I love that place. That has this huge hill that's for like 18-wheeler testing and stuff. It was so cool. It was so cool to see like a totally different take on drifting. They rebuilt brake pads They use like retreaded tires, like recap tires. They built their own wheels. Everything was so wildly different. Every time, like, I've been to Africa to do drifting stuff. I've been to Japan. I've been to Poland. I've been to Germany. I've been to Ireland. I've been to America, Canada. Everywhere has their own, like, flavor of stuff. Canada, you don't realize until you're up there that everything is a rust bucket, rust trap, and they're, like, fighting rust, ripping the cars apart. And, like, they end up with very specific, like, Canada type stuff. You end up in... Or like maybe they have a bunch of ice stuff they do up there. They have all this different type of stuff. You end up in Ireland and like they have the very specific Irish stuff with the big flamboyant Dave Egan promotions, like all this cool stuff. And like that's what I saw and it was super cool in Mundella Park. And like they complain there's no drifting over there, but then when I see it, it looks huge. And then I'm over in like Poland, and Poland has a completely own part of it, and like they do all this mountain drifting, and like we were in Poland, and I cannot say names, so I'm not going to do it. But I'm Tomas's hometown and stuff, and like I'm driving around, and I'm like, "Is that a fucking street drift like E36 Ti with a light bar on it?" He's like, "Oh yeah, that's a mountain car," and it's just like driving down. And he's like, and I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "You never see like street drift cars in America." Car? Yeah, and then we're driving around and we see a couple more just like dotted around. I'm like, what in the world? And then we're driving to like Warsaw and there's drift cars, like pro drift cars on trailers being transported to other cities. And then we went to like multiple tracks to like walk around. One track was like part of the highway, and they open up the gate and like drive down the highway and stuff and then close it. And like there's just people on weekdays testing drift cars. God. And they're like, oh, drifting is not huge here in, Poland or whatever. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, it seems
everywhere.
Huge. And like, Wout is always saying like, there's no European drifting. There's no grassroots European drifting. It doesn't exist, Aaron. It doesn't exist. And then Fielding is over doing like all these track days in France. And then like we see the Up and Smoke tour stuff and whatchamacallit in Amsterdam in his hometown. And he's like, Drift Week would never work. And they're literally doing like this little like Drift Week thing on like weird tracks. They don't even look like tracks for a bunch of them. It's like it's like a rest stop or something on the side of the, like it was weird. And you're like looking at this stuff and there's like so many crazy things around the world and so many cultures. So now I love Poland. I would love to go back. I would love to go drifting there again. I loved Chelsea and I went together and we were in like E46s and his was a little faster, and like we were just I that's a dick. I'm like, his was faster. I think he had a 328 and I had a 325, so he's just like but no, the track was amazing. We're like on each other's doors. It was so much fun. Damn. So good.
I've got to make it out there.
And Tomas took me street drifting and like this weird like little parking lot area thing. Did you see that video?
I don't think I saw that one.
Go look at my video. It is comical. I duct taped a GoPro to my baseball hat, and it's in front of my eyes. Like I shoot this way, and like I cannot see out of the car.
You're seeing out the sides of the GoPro.
Remind me to show this to you in a few minutes. We're literally drifting like curb to curb. There's 1,000 tires. They built themselves a track. It is so hilarious. On like in just like the forest on like some abandoned parking lot off a road, and like just. People are walking to work through the track and like looking at us as we drift around them and stuff. It's so hilarious. Anyways, no, Poland's amazing. I want to go back. Invite me.
Yeah, there you go.
Message me. And congrats on your Night Ride channel. You guys are murdering it. Come back and do Drift Week again.
Actually, just hit them up the other day.
Hit me up and I have a car for you.
Hey, there you go. Hell yeah. All right, Jerk705. Why do you hate low car style?
Oh. Okay, this is fun. So everybody thinks I hate low car style. It was always a joke because like we were missile car guys or whatever. All the people hated each other and like we would make jokes about it. And I made a joke video with like some Final Bout guys, Jimmy. Mm-hmm. I've had a low car before. Like the diff would hit reflectors and all this stuff and it was a mess. I just really like driving and I never cared about like how things looked. And everybody always has their own point of view on like why they're into cars or why they're into drifting or why they're into stance cars and everything. I love that everybody has their own thing. And like, I understand they like the way cars look and they like the pictures and they like want to frame something, or like they want the feeling of what a cool car and like what their nostalgia. Like if somebody got into drifting because they liked 2003 D1 videos and they want to build a car that looks just like that and experience that, and like they don't want to tear it up, that's awesome. I want to go tear cars up and fix them. Well, I don't want to fix them. I want to make marketing.
Yeah.
But I want to go
That's not my
tandem.
job.
I only like cars because I like going fast and feeling like I'm going to die. I want to go fast. I want to drive hard. I want to do that kind of stuff. Dude, I do not come in here and look at my cars ever. I don't wash the cars. We don't like take pictures of our own cars. We don't like, pose them and take pictures and take them places. I never have thumbnails because we don't take pictures of the cars. Like, I don't care about that stuff at all. I care about the driving. So if you come to like cars because you like the way they look, I totally get that. If you come to racing because you want to be the fastest and you're in drag racing, I get that. That's what you're doing. Anything about the cars to make it faster. I'm not trying to make my cars the fastest. I'm trying to make my cars the most reliable for 100 laps a day to get the best tire wear possible. This whole project is for the best tire wear possible. And like, we don't have a body on it right now because we're testing things and we're seeing like how the car handles and how it tandems and all these things. And every time we take this thing out, we're just like, oh my God, it works better than you would think. And like, it keeps me excited about drifting. And I just don't care about the way it looks. It looks retarded or really dumb in pictures. You know what I mean? It looks like a little mess of tubes. But this thing, you take a windshield out of your street car, that feels like you're going 150 miles an hour. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like it's just such a totally different experience. So anyways.
That's crazy.
I just am not the person that ever cared about the way cars looked. Yeah. So.
I don't blame you. All right. So Miles T. Johnson, how do you, you spelled that wrong. How do you feel about hosting a virtual grassroots competition?
Oh, you know what? I've thought about that. I've thought about hosting like virtual drift stuff on Sims. And I came to the conclusion that it's not my cup of tea and I stay in my lane and I have plenty of stuff to do and other people should do it. I am not the best sim driver. I have a fancy sim. I don't know the first fucking clue about it. Yeah, I have a fancy sim and I don't play it once a year. I feel so dumb for even having it in my house because it just takes up space. And I always want to get rid of it. That's the only reason
I haven't gotten one. Because I know it's going to be one of those things that like, I'll buy it, I'll use it a couple times for a week or two, and then I'll never touch it again because I don't have time. I
don't play video games. I would like to play video games. Like Elden Ring came out, and I like FromSoft games, so I was like, I'm going to play that. So I played it for 40 hours or 80 hours. I'm like, done. And I don't touch it again, and I don't play another. Like, it took me 2 weeks, and I did it when I was sick or something like that. And then I don't, because it was COVID or something. I didn't have COVID, but it was COVID year or something. Right. So I play it till it's done, and then it's over. I don't play video games ever. I just am not good at sitting down and doing that. I don't watch TV in the same way. Like, I'll get into a show like One Piece, and it takes me a decade to finish it.
All right. So, you got $3,000 to spend on a bone stock car. You have tires, and...
Man, the only thing you
what are you going to prioritize?
If I had an E36 M3, I would do an SLR kit if they sell SLR kits. I would do the NERP Tech little e-brake handle. I would do BC coilovers. And I would probably replace the clutch fan because they always blow up on me. And the seat.
Dude, yes, the seat is like the biggest one for me out of almost anything. And I think other than coilovers. Probably
all you need on that. I'm sure you would need a bunch of other stuff. If you didn't lower it too much, that's probably the majority of the stuff you need.
Right.
There you go.
If you lower it too much, you got to deal with rear arms and all that stuff. Kits. Yeah, they do.
Cool.
That's perfect. Hell yeah. Well, there you go.
The SLR kit's like the best value on the market for an angle kit. Those things are cheap for what they are.
Yeah.
They make the car
big FDF guy here, obviously.
Oh, there you go. But, I'm not sponsored by SLR. They just there's nothing. You'd be insane.
Well, sadly, FDF's not on in Juku, so that's like the weird.
No, I was just gonna say you'd be insane to buy an E36 and not do SLR.
Yeah. Everyone. Yeah. Anyways,
you can do WiseFab, I guess. But I still like. I drive a lot of WiseFab stuff, and I like their stuff a lot. But I still like the SLR and the E36. Wow, it's gonna come like punch me. I'm like, how'd you even get to hour 2:30 of this stupid video?
You paid attention that long?
See that? I'm gonna get a call from him at 2 hours after this comes out. He's gonna yell at me. All right, what else?
Anything biggie. So your best piece of advice for anyone just getting into drifting?
Get out. Get out while you can.
Don't do it.
No, the biggest advice for drifting is like, enjoy yourself and don't let it cripple your life. Make it a positive in your life and not a negative. So many people have made drifting a negative in their life that has hurt them in some way and not a positive. And it's really hard to do that because it takes a lot of thought and care. And I think drifting has hurt a lot of people, whether it be financial, whether it be with friends. I see so many people break up friendships over it, financially cripple themselves, build dumb shit that they're never going to make it to the track once with, get their feelings hurt because they don't know their own limitations, not understand their relationship with drifting. Like, if all you're going to be is someone that can afford to drive a Seto, because then you can actually drive. If you live 20 hours from the nearest track, you're not a mechanic, all these different things, you live like on a flat surface, so there's no mountain drifting or something.
Right.
You're never going to enjoy driving. You're never going to get to a track. You're never going to be around people. At best, maybe you go street drift at night, which is a solitary thing because it's hard to find like friends that street drift in fun locations that aren't going to get you in trouble and all these different things. Drifting is really expensive. A lot of people go out and they burn off a set of tires and they're like, whoa, I don't like changing tires. This is a lot of work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they're just done. So I was going to say, make sure if you're new to drifting and you want to own a car and go drive and do all these things, go to events, ride with people, offer your time for free, offer to change their wheels and tires and like drag stuff around and help them load their trailer and pick up their trash and scrub their car, do whatever it takes, and use your labor for free to like make friends and do everything else and create a relationship with drifting, which is positive in your life so you don't ruin your life. Make friends. Don't be an opinionated person like me and make everybody mad. I don't know.
I don't think there's anything wrong with being opinionated.
Yeah. So anyways, just make it a positive.
Yeah.
Too many people, everybody.
That's
I
good
would.
advice.
How long have you been around drifting?
4 years, 4 years.
Okay, so not very long.
Yeah.
Most people leave drifting angrily, and are mad at drifting. And the people that stick around forever, you'll notice it's always the same people year after year after year at events. And they're happy and they love each other and they're high-fiving and it's always the same community. Yep. You don't realize that like the community constantly churns out 100 angry motherfuckers that have credit card debt, and a broken car. And like, I'm sure if you've been around for 4 years, you constantly see cars go for peanuts that are unfinished.
Oh, yeah.
And that destroyed somebody. These dudes, you look at the part list and you're like, this car has $30,000 of parts in it. It doesn't run and it's for sale for $5,000. We saw an RX-8 online today for like $5,000 with a full LS swap. Everything's basically done. Has all these parts on it, but like, it's not running for some reason. But everything's physically in the car and you're like, some dude's getting hosed for like tens of thousands of dollars on this thing.
Yeah, I hate to see that happen to people, but that's your own choices. But okay, and then last one is if you could have one message to the entire world, what would it be? Doesn't have to relate to drifting.
Oh, that one catches you off guard.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be the same thing. Be a positive force in the world. Do something useful. Most people are like, I sound like such a negative person all the time, but I try to be creative within drifting and like build events that people want to go to, build adventures people want to do, build like, if you've never been on Drift Week, there's people crying at the end. Like, wow. And there was, I don't want to call everybody out that cried, but there was probably, Mark, how many people cried at the end of this Drift Week? Like full grown men. Depends on who it is. At least 5 or 6 people. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Both.
Joy, there's quite a bit.
Yeah. There's sadness too.
It varies.
Yeah. But
Damn.
there's people like literally grown men crying that are 50 years old. Wout cries every damn one. And they're just like, I have to go back to normal life now. Like, I've shared these adventures with these people. Like, this is adult summer camp. Like, you don't get this as an adult anywhere else in these people's lives. Even if they have lots of money. Like, we have plenty of people with huge means on Drift Week. You know, like, and because it's obviously it takes a lot of money to do. There's people that have done literally every Drift Week. Or there's a lot of people that most of the time, it's 50% of the time it's returning drivers to Drift Week. It's always the same people.
Nice. Okay.
But I was gonna say, there's people that are just like crying, like, I have to go back to the normal world now. Like, I don't want to drive at normal events anymore. I don't want to go do whatever I was doing in drifting. I'm not interested in my pro car anymore.
It's like that.
Yeah, so like there's a lot of people that completely change the way they're building cars, that change the way they're doing stuff in their life. It's very common. I didn't realize this for a while. It's very common for people to quit their jobs and change their professions for Drift Week, which I didn't understand. I was like, you quit your job to do this? They're like, yeah, it was a good catalyst.
Holy shit.
Yeah, they're like, I figured it was a change in my life. Like, this was a good thing to go do for myself. And then, like, I think our Texas Street Legal driver just quit his job to do Drift Week. He was a nurse, and he's like, I might as well do this. And then, like, I think he's going back for school for training or something, or going to go to a new job. But yeah, I was going to say that stuff is super common. So it's oftentimes like a big crossroads in someone's life, them doing something different, or it's the only time that like they're away from their kids or all their stress, their job for 2 weeks, just living their life. And like Drift Week isn't just about the track time. These guys are partying like rock stars. Like, you know, normal people don't normally go rent out the top floor of a casino and party at a casino.
Yeah.
But you know, like there's a baller at Drift Week that lets all that happen and they pay for it. And then everybody gets to go party. On Drift Week 1,
so cool.
like everybody's at Hoonigan and no one had been there. On Drift Week 2, no one had ever been to the Freedom Factory outside of just Cletus's group. Like they'd never done anything in public.
Right.
We were the first outsiders there. So there was a lot of excitement about that. On Drift Week 1, we went to like a race service party thing. On Drift Week 6, like we chartered buses, or I think one bus, and had a full bar on it where everyone was drinking free and did a strip club tour of like chartered buses. So like you're on a bus with James Dean and his girl going to strip clubs one after another.
That's hilarious.
This is 2.5 hours and it probably doesn't matter. But you know, like at what point are you doing this with all these famous people within the drifting community? You know,
where else do you get that?
Yeah, nowhere else does a normal drifter get to experience being around the high level people or whatever. On Drift Week 5, the normal drifters like say, wow, he hadn't done much in America, or my German friends, Flo and Alex, or a lot of these people, they're introduced to American drifting all at once, and then suddenly they're at the LZ festival with 10,000 people. I think we had like 8,600 people there. Yeah. They're at an event on like a little FD track with 8,600 people, literally a full Formula D crowd watching a packed audience, and there's a 2,000 person line to try and do ride-alongs in the cars and, you know, all the stuff we're doing. So they feel like rock stars. So we're constantly building out experiences for people to do that. Sometimes it's just as easy as like in Oklahoma, there's this amazing, huge, crazy, gigantic park. And I took like a dozen Frisbees and we went and played Frisbee with a group of people.
Oh, yeah, I saw that, yeah.
So you're playing Frisbee with all these influential people.
I played disc golf growing up, so.
Yeah. So anyways, I was just going to say, we're constantly building in experiences for everybody that you can't buy. You know what I mean? And you wouldn't get, and you're suddenly just like on track with James Dean, and then you're partying with him, and you're going to the next place, and you're doing all this crazy stuff just over and over and over again.
Countless once-in-a-lifetime type opportunities.
Or like, for instance, Guy from New Zealand came over, and then like he made friends with Jimmy Oakes and these people and flies them back to do his events over there and promotes his stuff. So there's like people doing businessy type stuff. Dave Egan met Adam LZ on Drift Week when I had Dave Egan over to announce the thing. So like he came over specifically for that, and they make like the connection there, and suddenly they're doing the world tour. You know, it's like there's constantly cultural things happening within Drift Week that you get to see personally and be a part of, and that's not normal for grassroots guys. They're suddenly just like on fire, you know, like feeling totally different, meeting people from around the world, and then like suddenly all these people are, I'm going to Alex and Flo's wedding in Germany.
Yeah,
and like, you know, we're doing all this stuff. And now these people travel in packs over to Japan together, and, you know, we're all doing stuff in a very different way.
Oh, yeah. That's one good perk of this is getting to meet all of these people. I got to judge with the Drift
Masters judging crew,
you
know, over in Ireland. Just so many cool experiences.
Oh, yeah. Hell yeah. Well, you've definitely lived a pretty exponential life so far, I would say. From an outsider.
Exponential, but
yeah, dude.
I'm getting to do a lot of cool stuff. And it's because of drifting and because I've been in it a long time and I know lots of people and I'm constantly trying to be like creating things and experiences, and I'm very aware of creating an experience for people, if that makes sense.
Right.
I don't want to, I host a lot of events there that it's just like, that's the drift event. 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 A lot of repetitive stuff like that. So I know it gets repetitive and boring. Someone can only drive the Houston Police Academy with Lone Star Drift so many times before they're like, I've done this.
Yeah.
And then those same guys go out and they drive with us on Drift Week, and crazy stuff happens on Drift Week that I don't want to repeat because we'll probably get in trouble.
That's fair.
Because the guys are doing a lot of illegal stuff and things that they shouldn't do and getting me in trouble. But so they're doing all this cool stuff, and then it opens up the world of drifting into a whole new thing, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Suddenly, you're not just like, I go to my local track, I go to my local track, I go to my local track, I go to my local track. Yeah. Suddenly, you're doing, I'm going across the country and doing all this crazy stuff with all these people and going.
That's what I'm trying to get
I'm not a person that likes clubs. I don't like strip clubs. Yeah, I don't like any of that stuff.
I've never been to a strip club.
We had so much fun with the group, though, because you're going with a group of people. We invaded that place with like 80 people. Imagine 80 of like the world's...
A whole floor?
most, like, James Dean was there. Dave Egan's there. I think Duarte and his crew were there. I can't remember. Maybe they weren't there on that one. It's always hard to remember.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Jimmy Oakes was in there. Chris Rudnick was in there. Fielding was in there. You know, like, I can just keep going down the list. There's so many interesting people being in there that, I don't know, it's just very, very
hard not to have fun at something like that.
So it's not about naked chicks in there or whatever. It's about this crazy group going on this crazy adventure with people from around the planet, from New Zealand and Australia, that would never get to do all this crap. Because if they flew over here, they'd do a 2-day event and then go home. And it wouldn't be anything special.
They wouldn't get any
And I slow down the whole process. Because if you've been to drift events, especially like working like you're doing now, you go in, you do your podcasting, whatever, you do your editing as fast as you can, you get right back out. It's not slow enough and long enough to make friends with all these people you're doing the podcast with, to hold their hands and go to dinner and experience all these different things and meet their friends and get in their car and go for rides with them and get in trouble and do street drifting and get in trouble doing that. And then, you know what I mean? Going to crazy parties and getting drunk with them and then being hungover the next day at the track and then doing the next thing and then replacing a motor with them. All the bonding time you get. Yeah. So
that's
anyways,
what makes the trip.
Creating experiences,
The off-track experience.
And I try to do that with Lone Star Drift stuff too, but there's not enough time to do it.
Yeah.
So you're doing the best you can.
Secluded on that, but...
Yeah. And I'm a very abrasive personality, so it's difficult for, like... I'm fun, but, like, I also make fun of people because it's my personality, or, like, I'm mean or whatever. So I was going to say, it's very hard for me because it's just like... like, you know, all these...
Grow some thicker skin, damn it.
No, it's just a lot of experiences and stuff and a lot of craziness. Because, again, I could make drift weeks miserable for people on accident.
Yeah.
Because, like, there's dudes. There was I don't want to call people out, but I was going to say there's somebody that had a car that was failing on drift week. And when the drift week was too spread out, like drift week 2, we had guys that if their car broke, they would never catch us.
Oh.
Because they would literally work on the car, drive 12 hours, get to where we were, have to work on the car in the parking lot, and we're just like pulling out and being like, bye, as they arrive.
Oh, that sucks.
So then they have to sleep, and then they have to do 5 hours of work on the car. And like, that really was one guy, and it was an RX-7. I don't want to toss him under the bus.
Yeah.
But I was going to say, I don't hate RX-7s. I was just... Anyways, I feel so dumb saying that. I shouldn't have called out RX-7.
You shouldn't have to say that.
But I felt so bad because I created a miserable experience for him where his car was constantly... like behind on the trip.
Yeah.
And because of the way we structured the trip, it was an asshole move to someone that couldn't keep up because their car was breaking, and like it was just one failure after another. Yeah. So they literally were never even at the same place as us, or when they were miserable and not having fun. And it was only reinforcing the bad experience because we moved so fast, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's why I try to region lock us somewhat so that we're in one region of the country, so we're not going like coast to coast, if that makes sense.
Right.
So we don't let people fail as epically as was possible on the earlier ones.
Damn.
So anyways, I'm always trying to make good experiences for people, but I can just quickly make a terrible experience for someone on accident by creating an experience for them.
But the effort you put into it after the fact to make it better, that obviously shows, and that's what's making it so valuable and
Somewhat, yeah.
such, I would say, why people want to go so much, other than just because people genuinely just love the way you run events.
Oh, thanks.
Seems. So, yeah, you definitely got that on your back.
Thanks.
Of course.
But then I make fun of stance cars and they get mad at me.
Yeah, but that's
I'm
just the
super hated
internet.
for the
That's
stance cars.
part
That was
of
all
it.
a joke, by the way.
Oh, I know.
That's the joke
Yeah.
that just keeps going forever, which is so funny. And I feed into it. so
Let
it's
it go. Let it just keep going.
funny. Oh, no, I do. It's just funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Any publicity is good publicity.
Anything else?
But no.
Any publicity
that's
is
pretty
not
much
good
it.
publicity. That's the dumbest thing I've
No, I
ever
know.
You
Don't take that
carry-
advice. I know. I'm just.
Like, look at Trump. All his publicity is not necessarily good.
Oh.
All right.
Anyways, all right. Do you want to plug yourself or any sponsors or anything like that?
No, I just want to plug all the drivers that have gone to everything we've done and have shared experiences, and all the spectators and stuff, and everyone that's gotten to do stuff with us. So many people get to travel around the world. Like, I take people to Japan or take them to Drift Week, or they come to our events and like do all this cool stuff. Thank you for experiencing Drift Week with us. Like Go Bosch over in Dubai, or Power Vehicles over in Japan. All these people make stuff so accessible for me. Dion, when I went to South Africa, whatchamacallit. So many people around there. Dave over in Ireland. Adam does stuff. Yep. Chelsea, just everybody. We're getting to do so many. Dorminati and Tomas and Lukas and all these people. I say his name constantly wrong. Lukas.
It's a hard name to say.
Yeah, I was gonna say, everybody, thank you so much for like being a part of all these adventures around the world, and I hope to keep doing them. Invite me to go places. People keep inviting me to go snow drifting.
I need to go out of the country.
Ice drifting, I keep not being able to line it up with my schedule.
That's one big thing I want to try.
It's driving me nuts. Thank you for inviting me over to Dubai recently, even though I couldn't go. So anyways, yeah, thank you. I just get to do so many cool things. So thank you for everyone for being a part of like this whole journey. Yeah. And then the sponsors get plugged enough. I just want to thank the people.
Yeah. Well, you picked up drifting quite a lot. You were a big part of that, it seems, from getting the momentum of drifting back up.
I don't know about that. I was just around a lot, and I got to like ride the wave. Yeah. The wave came from YouTube monetization, allowing people to have a huge distribution platform. Because before, you had to be in a magazine, the magazine controlled the distribution, or like Option Video, whoever could make a DVD. Mm-hmm. And now the drifters can promote their own stuff and create their own adventures. So like people think maybe a single YouTuber did something. No, it's just YouTube gave a platform for everyone to do something. Right. And then Instagram is trash.
I'd say
Facebook.
TikTok's trash.
No, YouTube really is the one that saved drifting and like let everyone live through the adventure. And now that everyone is vicariously living through vloggers, it's shot all the old cars up in value. Like drifting is getting exciting. Oh, and Assetto. Assetto has opened up drifting for so many people around the world. There's so many YouTube like video opportunities that hasn't even been touched that I've thought of, but like I don't know anything about Sims, so it's not my opportunity to take advantage of. No, drifting on Sims is amazing for the community. It's so good.
Yeah.
So much less car wrecking. 10 or 20 years ago, there were so many car wrecks because people just couldn't drive and they're driving over the limits, and the cars were. I bought 240s for like $300 to $800. I bought 350Zs for $2,000. Like HR cars.
I got mine for $600.
Yeah, so I was going to say, people used to just crash them for fun and drive like idiots.
Yeah.
Mark over there used to crash his BMW on purpose all the time. Just driving into walls. I'm not kidding. Like, so I was going to say.
How bad can we wreck today?
that doesn't happen anymore because people are so good at Sims, I think, now. And because the cars are expensive. Okay, is that
That's very true. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So cool. I guess look below the video. Make sure that subscribe button is not still red. And stick around.
Stuff. I've never promoted subscribe on my channel. I'm so bad. No, I'm bad at that stuff. Oh, there you go. Lone Star Drift channel.
Yeah, there you go. Go subscribe to him. Everything's in the description. Don't forget about that. And basically any part we talked about, you can probably find on Ninjuku.
Yeah.
Thanks, but
thank you.
See you each week for a new episode.
Bye.
Peace.
To the ceiling. Trust no bitch, can't catch no feelings. I've been taking long flights from the Bay to Ibiza. Hit home runs, I'm a ball like Jeter. I just want 4